Right, you're up.
The 900 barn is not, it's a zoning matter, not a planning board to talk about it. Hey, I'm telling you, we good to go? Okay. Green lights. In accordance with Section 5 of the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, be advised that notice of this meeting was made by posting on the bulletin board, Town Hall, and mailing to the officially designated newspapers a list of the meeting dates annually, indicating that this meeting would take place at the Town Hall at 7:30 p.m. on Wednesday, June 7th, 2023.
Corey Biller,
Present.
Allison Canfield,
Here.
Michael Cohen,
Here.
Maggie Miggins,
Here.
Deborah Nevis,
Here.
Judy BJ,
Here.
David Cosgrove,
Here.
Vice Chair Gaston Halbert,
Here.
Chair Beth Zoll.
Here. Thank you. Our first order of business, before we jump into the first order of business, I think the first order of business should be an amendment to the agenda as was printed. One of the applications, the first application listed, 23005, will not be heard tonight or by this board. I just want to allow Ed Buzak to explain the rationale for the board members and members of the public.
Thank you, Madam Chair. When I reviewed the application, it turns out that the relief sought by this applicant, that is the division of an oversized lot into two undersized lots, really represents an increase in density for that zone. That zone is a 29,000 square foot zone. These lots were going to be approximately 21 or 22,000 square feet each. So effectively, you're increasing the density that would be permitted on a lot. That's about 42,000 square feet or so, or 43,000 square feet, when it should be 58,000 square feet. Any kind of density increase or modification is not within the purview of the jurisdiction of the planning board. It's within the purview of the jurisdiction of the Board of Adjustment. The Board of Adjustment then will also, under its ancillary jurisdiction, handle the subdivision aspects. And there's two different kinds of relief that the applicant will seek. I spoke to the applicant's attorney today, explained my reasoning, and suggested that we, the board, transfer the matter to the Board of Adjustment, that a new application not have to be filed. However, any supplemental application involving the D5 areas would have to be filled out. And if there's any increased fees as a result of that, they will pay that to the escrows and everything else will be shifted over. There will need to be new notice given when the Board of Adjustment schedules the hearing. So if someone's here tonight on this application, I apologize that you're here. But on the other hand, you don't have to stay. So that's, I suppose, some good news. But you will be getting individual notice. If you've gotten it before, you'll get a new notice of the date, time, and place of the meeting before the Board of Adjustment. So that will be stricken. If that's all right with the board, I spoke to Eileen about it, and she's fine with the administrative transfer, and we just don't have jurisdiction to hear this case.
Thank you, Council. So, as stated, application 23005 is stricken from our agenda and will be referred as a matter to our zoning board of adjustments. I do want to note for the record, so Josh Hassan has joined the meeting before we're beginning any application hearings. So, thank you. Let's move on to the approval of minutes. We're only going to be discussing the minutes of April 19th, 2023. We received the originals as well as two separate revisions from, I believe they arrived from Natalia.
The only revision that was made after I sent that, and I apologize because Maggie, I had you recusing, but I didn't have you coming back. So I did have to insert that before the Annie Milburn application.
Yes.
That you returned to meeting room.
Great, you noted when she recused
Yes.
and then when she returned. Thank you for that correction. Did anybody else have corrections or comments on the meeting minutes of April 19th? Okay, I move to approve the minutes. Do you have a second?
Second.
Gaston, all in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Recuse?
Recuse.
Maggie will recuse from approving the minutes. Minutes of April 19th meeting are approved. Now we'll move on to, we have two memorializations to discuss tonight. The first, application 23001, the Estringer Development LLC, 285 Old Short Hills Road application. We received these memorializations via Ed Buzak. Did you receive any amendments or corrections, or have any to read into the record?
I have none to read into the record, and I did not hear any changes or modifications.
Great.
I would suggest that it be adopted.
Did anybody have any additional or any final comments? Okay, I move to approve application 23001, the memorialization of the application. Do you have a second? Srini? Is that a roll call vote?
Yes.
Corey Diller,
Yes.
Allison Canfield,
Yes.
Michael Cohen,
Yes.
Deborah Nevis,
Yes.
Sujata Shan,
Yes.
Srini Vijay,
Yes.
David Cosgrove,
Yes.
Gaston Halbert,
Yes.
that's all.
Yes. Great. Application 23001, memorialization is approved. And now we'll move to the 275 Company, application 21003. I just want to double check, is that application number accurate?
Yes, because it was an
It was
extension.
initially filed
Mhm.
20, okay, thank you. 21003, 275 Company, 275 Milburn Ave. Is everybody here eligible to vote on that one? Can you just confirm, please?
He is not. David is the only one not voting on it.
Great. Any corrections or changes that you?
No, and this you will recall is the extension of protections for 1 year.
Correct.
So it was
That was a
a
brief,
simple resolution.
great. I move to approve the memorialization. Do we have a second?
Second.
Corey Diller,
Yes.
Allison Canfield,
Yes.
Michael Cohen,
Yes.
Maggie Miggins.
Yes.
Deborah Nevis.
Yes.
Sujata Shan,
Yes.
Srini Vijay,
Yes.
Gaston Halbert,
Yes.
that's all.
Yes. Application 21003 memorialization is also approved. Moving on to our one order of business tonight, which is on our order of business, we also have an application for us, just for the record. Item of business is ordinance 264023. This is the 9 Main Street redevelopment plan discussion. We have Graham Petto, who is going to walk us through a bit of explanation of what the redevelopment plan entails, and just a reminder for everybody of sort of our role and what we're, as the planning board, charged to do tonight.
Sure.
Thanks,
sure.
Graham.
Good thing. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the planning board. Graham Petto, board planner for the planning board here this evening with you. I did prepare a consistency review memo that you all have received a copy of, I hope, that details the process set forth before you this evening. As I noted in the first section of the report, the board's responsibility this evening is to conduct a consistency review of the ordinance before you. That is per NJSA 40:55D-64. And the board is to review to determine whether the ordinance as presented is not inconsistent with the master plan. The ordinance before you this evening is for the 9 Main Street redevelopment plan. As you recall, this board is familiar, the township settlement agreement calls for effectuation of a 75-unit, 100% affordable development located at 9 Main Street at the site. And as part of the settlement agreement, this board also adopted a revised and updated housing element and fair share plan to the township master plan. That housing element and fair share plan does include this site as a contemplated development to be completed as part of the township settlement agreement. So, in furtherance to that, this ordinance can be considered consistent with the master plan as amended and adopted. For your benefit, I've included a number of other provisions of how the plan relates to the master plan. And there is actually also an entire section in the redevelopment plan document that was attached to the ordinance that talks about the relationship of the redevelopment plan to other related plans within the township and how it advances some of those goals and effectuates those. With respect to the redevelopment plan itself, I know redevelopment is a rather new thing here in the township. We don't have a lot of redevelopment, but many other communities do. It is essentially site-specific development parameters. There are bulk requirements, site design requirements specific to this property. And so any development application that comes in needs to be consistent with all of those parameters set forth within the redevelopment plan. So, so this will guide that process. So again, the board's purview this evening is just to review whether the plan as presented is consistent with the master plan, and make that recommendation and advance that commentary back to the township committee. The township committee will then hold a second reading on the ordinance, and at that time, they will have a public hearing and have a public process for the members of the public to participate and discuss the redevelopment plan with them.
Great, and at that time, at the second public, or the second township committee reading of it, will there be, you mentioned there's opportunity for public comment, will there also be a discussion or any sort of presentation on your part, or you'll be present at that if there's
I will be
any-
present and available to help guide through the process, and you can certainly avail any materials or anything that the TC may see as beneficial. to
Okay,
that
great, and that's
process.
in turn, because this has been crafted, I guess, and brought to the planning board for review by the TC.
Correct.
Our job's to understand consistency with the master plan, and if we have any recommendations to make those
Yes,
back,
at this time, you can
at this
certainly
time,
make
we
those
would
recommendations
establish
as
what
well.
those are, and then give our response back to the TC to adopt.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. And just to kind of round out this whole discussion, obviously this is the plan phase, so this is setting the development parameters for this site. In the future, when the developer is ready to proceed start with their application for development, that will be filed to this body, and there will be a site plan review process that this board will review the application for, as a regular development application as you do for a number of different things, like matters scheduled this evening, and that will be in context of the requirements of the redevelopment plan. So just for the benefit of you all to understand. These are essentially the rules that will govern this development.
Great, I appreciate that.
Sure.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for Brandon either on what he just discussed or on the plan as we received it?
So I know when this came up the first time, there was a lot of, there were some issues with environmental concerns from the township, or from the town residents. I didn't see them addressed in here, like are there any environmental restrictions or any kind of sustainability things addressed in the ordinance?
So, there are, as far as the environmental and the condition of the site, that's something that's going to be handled as an agreement between the township and the developer as part of that process. That is outside the redevelopment framework. The redevelopment framework only contemplates, what the construction of the buildable, envelope of the building will look like, design, finishes, those types of things. We do have references in the plan to some sustainable treatments. Green roofs are permitted, those types of things, with respect to sustainability and effectuation of the new development, for example.
Okay, so that'll be handled later on though.
So yeah, so as part of the site plan process, you may see some of those features and can discuss those with the applicant as they present that to you. You can ask those questions as long as it's related to the plan, of course.
Right, so once we have an application in hand, we can
Exactly,
respond to it.
exactly.
Okay,
Along those lines,
Yes.
we had discussed, excuse me, that they were doing environmental studies on the site, and that I think we had asked that whatever plan, that the site be up to in residential standards. So I'm just wondering where things stand with the environmental, with the assessment of what's going on the site in terms of.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, that's being handled, separate folks. I'm as the planner, I'm just working on crafting the redevelopment plan, which we drafted, and designing and allocating development parameters moving forward. Of course, the site needs to meet the standards of the DEP for residential development, and there are a series of requirements that need to be met in order to effectuate the development of the site. So, and that will be, again, as I mentioned, that's probably going to be handled as per the agreement process for the land transfer and other aspects.
So we don't know anything about that at this point?
I don't have the information to share with you.
that would all get handled both through, state, if it's DEP, and also coordinated with our local engineer. Would you be filled in on that process at the time that it occurs?
Right, we have an assigned LSRP to the site, right now, and they're working through that, process, but any of the.
That's a licensed state remediation professional?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, that's good.
So any of the environmental issues that have to be handled will be, it'll probably be a negotiation between the township and the developer, how much we would end up doing and at what condition that we would turn it over to them. They may have to bring the site up to the proper remediation standard as approved. Everything has to get approved by the DEP.
Okay.
There are DEP approvals that go along with this entire thing. And as the licensed site remediation professional, they are licensed to do this very thing. This is what they do. So they know the steps that need to be taken, and so we're in contact with them. But, yeah.
Right,
this
so
is
that
not-
process
it's
is
not-
separate from this process,
It's
but that
separate
is.
from
but
the
that's-
planning board process. It's more like, that would be handled, everything like below grade would be handled, any of the contamination that's present would be remediated to the proper standards and in accordance with the DEP rules.
And that's prior
So-
to any
and
development
that's-
being
yeah.
allowed to take place.
Correct.
Right. And it could be the developer that ends up doing portions of that remediation, and
Mhm.
so that's something that,
It's part of the negotiation
right.
process.
Does that answer some of your questions? Okay, thank you.
So the remediation.
Can you just speak up into the mic a little louder?
Yes.
Thanks.
So with the remediation and the site planning, does that come back to the planning board at that time?
Not with respect to the remediation, the planning board will review, once the site is cleaned and prepped and certified by DEP for development, the applicant will prepare and submit an application for development to construct the site and develop the site. And it's at that time that the planning board will review the new development to be proposed.
So after this point, there's the environmental studies or any environmental action to be taken will be returned to this board.
Yeah,
Essentially.
it's not jurisdiction of this board, right? That's part of the negotiation process.
Thank you. Questions? Okay. Anybody? Oh, please, I'm sorry.
No,
I
that's
didn't
all
see-
right.
you raised your hand.
No, I didn't raise my hand. I was just for the
Go
right time.
ahead.
As the boards reviewed this, they may have recognized this is a little unusual. We have an ordinance, we have a couple of unusual factors. Number one, there's a resolution that the township committee actually adopted referring this to us. Typically, we just get a memo from the clerk because the law says any land development ordinance we have to receive. In the local redevelopment act, there's a specific process which includes a resolution directing it to the planning board. And secondly, you'll see that they actually put in the resolution what we have to look at.
Mhm.
It's strikingly similar to what we look at with regular ordinances. The language is almost verbatim and obviously should be because it's a similar kind of review. But if you notice, there's a separate section cited. It's not under the MLUL, it's under the redevelopment law. But it's the same kind of review. So this is like a twofer. We're doing both. We're doing it under the redevelopment law, we're doing it under the MLUL, both of which are the same. They're coincident with each other. The second thing is, if you look at the ordinance is only a couple pages long.
Mhm.
And what this ordinance really does is adopt that plan, which is the essence of what the redevelopment is going to be. But it doesn't have all of the details in it. And those details eventually will be worked out in a redevelopment agreement that we don't get involved in, the township gets involved in and is involved in. And then, as Graham said, eventually a site plan will be prepared based upon this redevelopment plan and based upon the development agreement that the township will negotiate. And that will be the standards by which we judge that site plan. And that will come before us like any other site plan, but instead of looking at the typical ordinance that we've looked at before, you're going to be looking at this, you're going to be looking at the agreement, and you're going to be looking at the plan. So it's going to be an education for all of us, a good experience for us to do this. So,
I appreciate that. Thank you for that clarification. Yes, and thank you, Graham,
Sure.
for the memo that you laid out, which I think you kind of stepped it through.
Mhm.
I appreciated having that to review as well. I move to vote that this is not inconsistent with the master plan. I move to state that this is not inconsistent with the master plan. Give a second.
Second. Corey Miller,
Yes.
Allison Canfield,
Yes.
Michael Cohen,
Yes.
Maggie Miggins,
Yes.
Deborah Nevis,
Yes.
Sudrafa Shan, Srini Vijay,
Yes.
Gaston Halbert,
Yes.
Beth Zoll.
Yes. Great, recommendation will be made. And I just want to restate for the record that this will go back to the TC, and that second reading is on June 20th, 21st?
The day before our meeting.
Yeah, it's Tuesday, June 20th.
Tuesday, June 20th. Thank you for confirming that, and that would be at their 7 PM TC meeting. Okay, at which point public comment is welcome. Okay, thank you. Moving on to our one application for this evening, application 23003, Tamino Cigars. This is for expansion of amended site approval.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. Would you like us to proceed?
Yep, go ahead and introduce yourself and we'll follow. precedent.
My name is John Fazio. I was before you with the original application. I'm from Fazio Law Offices. Our offices are in Hoboken. You know Fernando Lopez. He's going to be our only witness tonight. He also gave testimony at the original hearing when we got the original
And Mr. Fazio, as I'm sure you may have guessed, we do have some new members of the board, so certainly we've all received the materials and received our planner's report as well, but feel free to characterize this application as well. I appreciate that.
Sure.
Thanks.
Just give me 1 minute. I'll pull a couple things out.
Absolutely.
So there was a resolution that was granted back on, let's see what the date was. It was September 22nd, 2021, when Tiniano Cigars was opening up their business for them to operate as a retail cigar shop and to sell cigars to the public. And now we're coming before you with an application to expand the use. Basically what happened was they're having a lot of success with their current clientele. And some of the people had expressed an interest in having events. So there was about 3 instances where Tiniano Cigars opened up to the public, usually after the normal business hour for an event where they had, I think, 20 to 30 people at these events, something in that range. And what it was existing customers were bringing a group of friends for a private event in one instance. And they used that same model a couple more times. And they would bring people that they knew, some of whom were from the neighborhood and some of whom were just acquaintances. And they were introducing them to the shop and the offerings of the cigars that are there. And the shop was making sales at those events to people who weren't currently customers. And then some of these people have come back and continue to be customers of the shop. So they'd like to expand their use to be able to have these events 1 or 2 times a month. It wasn't something that was originally contemplated when we came before the board and got the original resolution. In addition, since opening, Tiniano Cigars also has provided a membership option to customers, where if they want to be a member and have a membership and have access to a cigar locker on site, they can buy product at the store, they can keep it there, they can come back and use that product and sample it with a friend or someone else who might also want to purchase product at the store. And they're also allowed to have food and beverages on site and for a limited period of time while they're sampling product or using what they've already bought. as distinguishable from a social club or any other type of model lounge. Tinino Cigars is not separating out the offerings that they make to the general public from their members. Everybody has full run of the store. Everybody can purchase, everybody can use the sampling area, but you can't bring in your own cigars if you are not a member. Or leave the cigars you purchased at the store in a locker if you're not a member. And you can't bring guests if you're not a member. You can purchase on your account, you can sample, but you don't have those privileges, which are being given to members as an inducement for them to bring new people to the shop, to have an opportunity to sample all of the different product, because these are people who are more repeat customers. They're also getting notice of promotions or like new inventory first, so that if it sells out, they have first crack at it. So those are the benefits of the membership program, which has been successful. How many people do you have that are members right now?
But I think before he's going to give testimony, we would need to have him sworn in.
Sure. Do you want to do that now? I'm not going to have him give testimony right now. I just know the
Okay,
number of
I
members.
just want to make sure, because if you're asking him a question, I don't know, I just want to make sure he's doing it correctly.
Yeah, I would swear him in now, this way then we'll just have it all covered.
Okay, or just you do yours and then we can do him. Either
All right,
way.
well,
Sorry.
anyway, we can get into the number of members, but it's not a large number of patrons, but that's another program that he wants to build up to do more business. And to date, the store has been successful. It's been an addition to the community. And I'm going to address some of the issues that have been raised by the board in different departments in the memo that you guys provided to us, mostly through Fernando, but I'll just go quickly through a couple of them here.
That's fine. I
Just
think
note it.
before we get too far, are you going to go to the waivers? I'm going to let you say it.
Okay.
Okay. You're going to say it well.
No, I wasn't, that was gonna be the second point.
Go ahead, Ed.
I still have the first one. And you will recall, we went through this a week or two ago, a meeting or two ago. While I appreciate Mr. Fazio's presentation in terms of what's going on here, none of that is testimony. None of that can be considered by the board. Because it's, A, Mr. Fazio's not sworn, B, he's the attorney, he's the representative, not the person or the entity that is the applicant here. So I would ask Mr. Fazio, as we move into this, your presentation was fine in terms of setting the stage, but I think we need Mr. Fernando Mr. Lopez to talk about the things that you need to have talked about here and to address the issues and so forth. So that's number one. I just wanted to make sure the board, remind the board that none of what Mr. Fazio said is testimony. Secondly, as the chair said, there are a number of waivers that were requested that were checked off in the box by our engineer and secretary to determine whether the application was complete. It is complete, assuming those waivers are granted. And in addition, there's a separate one, I'm not sure if there was a box for this or not, requesting an environmental impact statement waiver, but I believe, and I'm going to defer to Eileen and Martha, that because it's a minor site plan application, there is not a requirement for an environmental impact statement. Is that correct? Okay, so there's no waiver of the EIS. There was a request for one, but that was really unnecessary. So let's do the waivers first, and there's one other item that I want to talk about, and to some extent, I'm going to perhaps ask Graham and Martha and Eileen to just
Wayne,
talk about this. Yeah.
great.
Okay, so let's do the waivers first.
So, yes, so Mr. Fazio, if we can begin with the waiver request and just, I guess he is allowed to talk to us.
Yeah,
about
should we
that,
talk about the
yes.
waivers? If you look at the application, Mr. Fazio, at the beginning, and I believe this is furnished to you, there's the checklist is furnished. And if you don't have it, I'll be happy to just go through those waiver requests.
Yeah.
Was that a yes for me to do it or a yes that?
Well, we have,
You have
The ones that I see here are for the, um,
Proof of service submitted.
yeah, that one doesn't really apply because we did do the proof of service of newspaper advertisement.
You did, okay, so can we have Eileen confirm that?
Yes, we do have that.
Okay.
So those
we-
two were
we-
taken care of
Great,
anyway,
thank
just in an abundance of caution. And then the existing protective covenants, deed restrictions and easements. Honestly, not sure why we checked that. I don't know that that applies either. I don't, in this case,
Well,
we're not.
I think there may have been a determination that there was, there's no need for any of those things in the context of the application that's being, is that right, Martha? Okay.
And the sustainability checklist, I don't think applies either, or the digital copy of plans submitted, I don't know if that's.
I think there were actually no real plans submitted,
I don't-
as
we
I
didn't
recall, there were
receive
some
plans.
photographs and things, so that's probably the basis for the waiver request.
We did have a.
There was
That's the
a,
last one.
Oh, there was, I'm sorry.
there was a
I
floor
told.
plan which was updated to show the 2 rooms and the layout.
But it just wasn't submitted digitally.
It was, everything's been
Oh.
submitted digitally.
So we have
Okay,
everything.
so we
It
don't
just
have
wasn't
that.
at the
So we
time.
just don't need the waiver.
We don't need
request
the
at this
waiver
point.
because I think we met, except for the, maybe the sustainability
The
check.
sustainability checklist. Which is typically for newer build outs or developments.
I don't know, Eileen, is there anything else? that-
Yeah, I guess this
Need
is really a tenant's application, it's not a landlord, it's not an owner's application for
A new development.
development, correct?
Okay, so it wouldn't apply as opposed to a waiver is required? This would be more similar to the EIS
That's
requirement.
what I
that
would
it
think,
not
is
apply.
that-
If they submitted it, it's blank, which indicates they're not doing anything, so you could go either way.
Okay,
You know,
all
I mean,
I-
it is here, it's just not, they're not doing anything sustainable, so I would say they did submit it.
Okay.
But they're not, the
There's
checklist
nothing.
is here,
Right,
they're
okay,
just not doing anything sustainable.
Okay.
In my-
that's great, so we got through, so there, none of those waivers need to be addressed.
okay,
And then there are a number of other sort of technical waivers that I think tie into more development kinds of applications than these types of applications. And I believe that we
Right.
usually
flat
see these
circulation
kinds
plans,
of waivers,
building plans,
right,
landscape
for
and
these kinds
facilities.
of applications. So it,
Okay.
and I assume, Mr. Fazio, that's the basis for not having submitted any of those things, because it's not that type of application.
Correct, they're not applicable to this type of.
So with that, if someone would move to grant the waivers that were shown in the checklist marked as waiver requests, seconded and vote on it, we can get through that part, so we can hear Mr. Lopez.
Okay, I move to approve the waiver requests as noted in the checklist. Srini?
Corey Biller,
Yes.
Allison Canfield,
Yes.
Michael Cohen,
Yes.
Maggie Miggins,
Yes.
Deborah Nevis,
Yes.
Sujata Shan,
Yes.
Srini Vijay, Gaston Halbert.
Yes.
That's all.
Yes. Thank you. So now your application is accepted for us to continue to proceed. Ed, you said there was one more thing you wanted to discuss before they jump in. Is that right? You want to talk to
Yes,
Martha and then?
yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
I knew it would come back.
You got it.
If you just kept going. It's somewhere that would come back. And the issue is the variance. And I don't know, I didn't see the actual notice if there was a request for a variance. I know the application had use checked, but that was erroneous. It's not a use variance application, because that would be before the board of adjustment, as we said earlier.
Application to the planning board in connection with the applicant to promote increased business by hosting more customers on site. Providing membership option, hosting client-sponsored and private events. Applicant may also seek other variants and waivers as need may arise. That is all the notice for. So they
Okay.
need
Notice for the parking
So,
variance.
yeah, so there's no specific notice for the parking variance. When I reviewed the reports, and was prepared tonight, and I didn't get a chance to talk to Graham or to Martha, so I apologize to both of them for raising this at the meeting. But I think it's important in terms of what we do. The standard is pointed out in the planner's report, I believe in the planner's report, 'cause Martha, you didn't have a report on this,
No, I
right?
didn't.
Because there's no exterior activity. In the planner's report, Graham refers to the fact that the category of use is the same, and the standard by which parking and loading areas is the same as what was already granted. So they need 9 spaces. They received a variance at the previous application for not providing those 9 spaces. They need 1 loading zone, 1 loading area, and they received a variance for that. Graham's point in his report was that while the standard is the same, and therefore technically they've gotten the variance, it's likely that given the change of, I'm going to call it a change of use, the expansion of the activities on the site, let me put it that way, would likely generate more parking requirements because you're going to have more people, you're going to have events, assuming the board grants that kind of application. And therefore, the question becomes, does he have to reapply for the variance? We can't speculate as to what the magnitude of that variance beyond the 9 spaces that we already granted him, because the standard is the standard. So my thought was that because variances typically run with the land, so to speak, run with the approval, and there's no change of use here in the sense that would generate any more parking than we've already granted a variance for under the ordinance, because that's the standard we have to look at. It's still 9 spaces. That we not consider reapproving that variance, because I don't think we have to reapprove it. It's already been granted. Now, again, I didn't have a chance to talk to Graham in advance of tonight. I'm trying to give him as much time to think about this as I can, but I'm running out of words to say. So let me, if I might, Madam Chair, I'd like to.
I can, and I'm a little lost in I don't know where we are.
Okay.
I don't know if everybody else on the board has us, but maybe Graham, you can respond, and then if I'm
Maybe that'll
still
clarify.
confused, I will
Okay.
ask for clarification.
Yeah, I think, and thank you, Ed, for clarifying this as well. To continue Ed's commentary, there is no additional, the use as approved by the board previously is a retail use. There's a line in the ordinance that stipulates parking is X amount for retail use. That figure isn't going to change. However, the subjective additional commentary that we had in our report is they're contemplating a lot of additional things to happen at the site, that are complementary or associated or related to the retail use. And for the benefit of their expansion of the approval, they should provide testimony as to what those are, and provide some context to the board to understand what level of intensity we're looking at. Now, as Mr. Buzek further alluded to, there's no line in the parking code that says if you do retail plus, it's this amount. There's nothing to that effect. So the variance relief has been granted for retail use for the 9 spaces. But it's more so just to provide context for the applicant to explain to the board what they're proposing to do, and to give you all some parameters and understanding as to what's going to be happening at the site. I concur with Mr. Buzek. I think that this can operate under the variance relief that's already been granted for the 9 spaces.
Okay.
I didn't hear you.
I just.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying as far as the events, but my concern would be the lounge. Because that's more daily use.
Mhm.
So
And
Is it now, it was approved as a retail service of cigars, which it's now offering other things and a lounge area. So I wanted a little more indicating, like, what is your main use here?
Yes.
Are you now morphing more away from that into a cigar lounge, which we don't list as a permitted use in that zone? So that's really, and of course, if that's something that's going to be used on an everyday basis as opposed to events, which are every few months or so.
Right, so we're requiring testimony on what the predominant use is going to be, and clarification.
What is the primary use that's happening here?
Okay,
And just
I have
to
a question too.
expand
Okay.
on
Let's
just
let's
to
let them
round
go,
out
and then you'll ask
the comments, the Development Review Committee reviewed this application and provided a report to this board as well. And that was, a lot of our commentary at that time was, expressing to the applicant that they needed to provide that information
Okay,
as to what's happening in the lounge, what's going on. The board needs the benefit of that information to understand that.
great, so that's what we're gonna hope to
that's kind of
get
the
up
purpose
tonight,
of
okay. Corey, you had a
I just have a procedural question. So help me understand, we're asking for information about what's gonna be going on, the new uses and things like that. Is there a purpose to that? I'm sort of hearing, if the ordinance, if the waiver was already granted and nothing is changing as far as the type of use, the retail use. My thought is, well, that was conditioned on the facts as they were at the time, and therefore, if the conditions have changed, or it sounds like they've changed, then we could re-vote on that. But what I'm hearing from you is that it's not necessarily true.
Well, I think the variance was granted to allow the application to go forward and the use to go forward for 9 spaces. The determination was made based on the ordinance that this retail use required 9 spaces based on the square footage. It's a very objective standard. If it falls within the retail use, it's 9 spaces. If there's a different use, then 2 questions arise. One is that use permitted in the zone? We looked at this as retail, and it's retail, and it is permitted. But now, has the use changed, and is it permitted? If it's not permitted, then we all go home early tonight, really early, because we don't have jurisdiction if there's a change of use that is not a permitted use in the zone. And I'm assuming that at least we got this far, believing that this was a permitted use in the zone. Other than, and Graham, I'm looking at you because you looked at this and included this in your report, other than retail use in the zone, is there any other use that has a different parking standard that could perhaps be applicable? For example, if there's a lounge use, and I'm just completely making this up hypothetically, if there's a lounge use and it says, well, for lounge use, it's 1 parking space for every 100 feet of space. Well, that's a different story, because now you're talking theoretically, 18 spaces. Well, now you need a larger variance. And we went through this, if you remember, just the other application on the shopping center, where they put the pool in, and we had different standards because they had earlier standards, and we talked about, and we tried to articulate that. And if you look at the resolution, we tried to focus on, what are we actually granting a variance for? What were we thinking? And it would be the same thing here, but I'm not, there we knew that there was a change, and that change generated a higher parking requirement than had previously been granted. And if that were the case here, then yes, we have to consider the granting of a variance for that additional deviation from what the standard is.
If
But we
the
don't
other
know that
use
yet.
is acceptable within this zone.
That's right. That's sort of the threshold issue.
And if I could just expound upon Mr. Buzak's point, the question that we had following the initial DRC review was, the applicant stated at that time, at that meeting, that the principal use remained retail. The retail is the principal use, and these other activities are all just subordinate, accessory type, lesser activities. The primary use is still retail. So, that's why we characterized it to the applicant and said, well, you need to explain that to this group to, demonstrate that retail is the primary use, and that's the use against which we're, generating the parking requirement. We need some information about those other uses to determine whether those in fact may actually be more principal uses. We don't know the degree to which, and that's part of the testimony that we need to hear from them. As far as characterization of, how often are these things happening, but what's happening in these other related uses.
Okay, Allison.
I think had some.
I just
Oh,
wanted
I'm
to-
sorry.
Because we
Sorry.
have the amendment of the application, because
Yes.
there were specific conditions of their approval, which the way it was presented to me is they were seeking to have those conditions removed, which were traffic is in and out. There's no in-store seating that would allow for customers to linger in the shop. No food and drink will be served. They would not use to host any private events and the hours of operation. So my understanding is they were coming back to us to have those conditions taken out.
Those were specific promises that were made by the applicant
That's-
to get the original
Get the original
waiver
approval.
required.
So that was my understanding of the application, is that they were coming here to
And I
have
think
those
refer to- I'm
conditions
sorry,
removed
yeah.
from their approval.
So it's sort of changing the underlying assumptions. And so is that for this board to hear out?
Well, maybe we ought to hear, Mr. Cosgrove just indicated that from his vantage point, that.
Page
that was
3,
a
section
basis-
5 of the resolution.
Pardon me?
Page 3, section 5 of the original
That
resolution.
was a basis upon which the variance was granted because there would be certain kinds of uses and certain limitations on those uses.
Mhm.
So we ought to hear the testimony and see exactly what, as Graham said, see exactly what they're doing and whether this becomes the dominant use versus an accessory use, and then proceed on that basis. Okay.
Allison, do you
So
have a
that
procedure?
was-
That responded to your
That
question.
was my question,
Okay.
but getting to the point, is there a variance, for instance, for events? In other words, what would the next variance be, whether it was
I don't think for events, we would,
allowed?
I mean, there's a lot of establishments that have events
Yeah.
occasionally, book signings, bookstores and things like that, so, from a zoning standpoint, we don't really get involved in that. But the fact that it was in the resolution as a condition, so that's
Right.
why it's back here.
Okay, so only because it was in the resolution, got it, okay, that's answered my question.
Thank you for allowing us to sort out some of those questions, concerns. And you benefited from the opportunity to participate at the DRC. I don't know if you were at that meeting, or you certainly have the memorandum that emerged from it. I think you started referencing that before. So,
I have a question.
great.
that I mean, raised.
Just, yep, louder.
So you had said that there are other retail stores, like a bookstore, that could potentially hold an event or book signing and offer a visit and so on. Do they ask for that ahead of time? No,
No,
but they don't put in explicitly that we're not going to do that.
well, a lot of some of them, it depends on the application and what the board is kind of feeling at that time, what conditions they might put on it. But most of the retail places, well, first of all, if they didn't have to come to a board, there's no resolution that they're bound by.
This was the first time there was a retail cigar shop.
Okay. Waiver requests are granted. We will permit you to proceed, but we may have some questions procedurally as we go throughout. So,
Sure.
thank you.
Just raise your right hand, please, sir.
We're going to swear you in.
What?
Mr. Lopez.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that testimony you're about to give in tonight's proceeding to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Just state your name, spelling your name for the record, please.
Fernando Lopez,
Can you spell it?
FERNANDOLOPES. Sí.
Thank you.
See.
Sí.
Are you ready for us to proceed?
Thank you.
So, Mr. Lopez, can you describe for the board what these three events that you held entailed?
I have two events.
Two events so
Two
far?
events, yeah, in 1 year and a half. So that happened was I had the regular customer. They went there to buy cigar. They liked the place. They asked me, "It's my birthday next month. I would like to rent the place to bring my friend, smoke here, have some couple drinks. You allow me?" Say yes. That's the kind of event I have. The people smoke. Go there because they can go anywhere to smoke inside.
And how many cigars did you sell that night?
Maybe 60. People smoke like 3 cigars a day.
And,
Really
uh,
true.
and some of the people they brought with them were people who were not customers of yours?
There's no, some customer and some just guests.
And out of the guests, how many of them have now become your customers?
A lot. Yeah, like 20
And they regularly come to your
regular.
store?
Yeah, and
And
they are
when they-
local. They are local people.
And these are people that just come and buy cigars, they're not members or anything like that?
No man, just
So you found this was a good promotional,
that was excellent. I hope I have like, I wish I have like one event a week, not 2 events in 2 years.
but you're anticipating having, how many per month? In reality, how many do you think you might have per month?
Maybe one.
One a month?
Yeah.
And you found this to be a good promotion to promote your store, get new customers?
Yeah.
For the
100%,
retail sales?
Yeah, 100%.
Do some of these people also buy from you without actually coming back to the store online or some other way?
All this time, if people buy it today, they come back later.
Okay, and did you anticipate having customer-sponsored events or hosted events when you made the original application to be a retail cigar shop?
No.
So it came about because it was something that one of your customers wanted, and you thought this is going to be a good way to.
Yeah, I never thought that.
Now, going into, before we get into the specifics of the membership or some of the comments of the board, which I'll ask some questions about specifically, and the parking and all that, but just sticking with like the initial theme of how the use has changed, if at all. Can you describe when you first opened, if I'm a customer coming into the store, what you would offer me? If I'm going to look at your product and make a purchase, what would happen? I come in, and then what happens?
I have to explain what kind of cigar, what do you like. Smoke with me sometime. I have to smoke with those guys and explain all about the cigar and try to make the sale, not one cigar, just boxes.
So in order for you to sell me on a particular brand of cigar, you might come in the back with me and I might get to smoke one of those cigars as a sample.
You have to try it in the sampling room. If not, how you can buy it if you don't know what I'm selling.
And in the original plans that we put together, there was always this sampling room, and customers have always sampled and used that area for sampling product, correct?
Yeah. Some people just buy and go. Well, the other people, they want to try something new. And they want to be there.
But in your experience in this industry, unlike going into a liquor store where you certainly don't usually sample the product unless they have sampling, people want to be able to have a sampling area when you go to a cigar store.
100%.
And that's like a necessary component of having a retail cigar.
Yeah, it's better for the business if I have the sampling area.
So since the original application, when customers come into the store, has anything changed about this process by which you sell them product?
No, it's the same. Nothing changed.
But you have some customers who you've offered a membership option.
Oh, the membership for the lockers.
And how many customers is that really at this point?
Right now, I have 12.
12.
12, yeah.
And so
12 regular with the lockers.
And I mean, this is a small percentage of your total retail sales, or is it a large percentage?
This is a small. This is like regular, like normal.
But these are repeat customers though.
Yeah. Regular.
So why did you decide to offer these repeat customers a membership option? What is the benefit?
To sell more cigar and had how I can say, like.
Are these people ambassadors to bring other people to your
Yeah,
store to purchase
to
cigars?
bring me more people. So because nobody want to smoke by himself, they need like a partner. So one guy bring another one, the other one bring another one, and that's the way I make customer.
So you wanted to distinguish these people that wanted to shop with someone else or introduce someone else to your store and give them an incentive to come and bring those people in?
That's open for everybody, so they can bring anyone.
You're saying that the membership has the same rights as any other customer,
Correct. Yeah, that's open for everybody.
but the only
Only
difference.
the different, they have the locker, they can store it, the customer, the cigar in the locker. That's the only difference.
And
And
also,
they can bring their own cigar and store it there.
and they can also spend a little more time in the store and
Yeah.
have food and drink while they're
Yeah.
there with their
Yeah.
guests.
Yeah, if they wanna pair in the cigar with some liquor, they allow. Only those people have locker, not for everybody, because, and then I have to clean, I have to do, and they don't pay for that.
When you first came before the board, you said that you anticipated at any given point 3 or 4 customers in the store at a time. What's the traffic like today? How many customers do you generally have in the store at one time today?
In the store. I sampled yesterday, 7 guys, maximum. I
At
never,
your busiest point?
the busy, no more than 12 people in the same time. Like, that's very weird. That never happened.
So
Because
as,
it's like 4 people, they left, and other people came. So always like moving.
so as opposed to the 3 to 4 you originally anticipated, what do you think the average number of people in the store during the day is, any given day?
Like in and out. Could be like 20 people
All day?
all day. Just like that, yes. In and out, buy and go. It's no crazy. Like,
Okay, and when were you asking the board to have these events? Is it during the normal store hours or at another time?
no, normally it's like after 7 p.m. in the nighttime when the people finish work. Yes. Because nobody go there before 4 p.m. The store, I open at 12 and nobody go there until 4. I had to be there. Some guy go there, give me this, give me that, but very rare.
But are you normally open or closed during the time when these events are gonna be going on?
When the venga, what is it?
But I'm saying you're having these events at a time when the store ordinarily isn't open anyway.
Yeah.
So you don't have your normal patrons coming in during that time?
No.
Um,
The idea is for the event, I want to separate for the normal hours. If I have a private event, I just want to open for the private event and close for the public. So
and on that block, which I was just at your store and I was talking to some people in the area and looking around, I mean, everybody here is familiar with that block. On that block, at that time of night, how many stores are, other than you, are actually open, like on a night when you'd be having an event at 8 to 10 o'clock at night?
nobody's there.
Just
I
the
think
two restaurants,
I
right?
think just Enzo and the new place, the Lobster Shack. That's the only place they open.
So how many parking spots were actually like taken out of the whole street when we just left to come over here at 7:30?
Right now, it's open for everybody. There's no people there.
So the events wouldn't present any parking challenge.
And no. And if the event, I say 40 people, it's like maybe 10 cars. Because people come like together.
And your landlord also has a lot that if there
Oh.
ever was a need, you're able to
I
use
can-
for overflow.
I can use that.
Okay, some of the board's questions for you that I want to go through that were in the package that we got back are, did you need to make any increase in staffing as a result of having the membership or having these couple of events?
Just if I have an event, I need somebody to clean, another person.
So during the events, you would have one additional employee?
Yeah.
And you wanted to be able to have the people who want to do these events have catering or bring food. So that would be an additional person?
So that's the idea. If they go on an event, they have to bring somebody to do I just in charge of to sell the cigar and clean a little bit. Well, I can do everything. I can serve food. I can serve this. They have to bring somebody.
Yeah, so your operation would be increased from just one employee on board, which is you, to 2 additional people, 1 to clean and 1 to cater, right? There'd be 3 people there. We talked about the benefits of the proposed membership as a way for you to generate new customers. There's been a lot of questions along the line from different board members, and in this package that you're changing to a cigar lounge or you're making this into a social club. Can you just address that, what you're doing with the membership versus the idea of having some kind of like social club? Can you tell them why that's not what you're doing?
I don't change anything. I'm just keeping the same thing. The idea of this is to have the private event.
But on the membership side, why isn't the membership like having a social club? Why is it just a part of increasing your current use of selling cigars?
Okay, my member, they're allowed to bring guests all the time. They're allowed to bring own cigar, buy me cigar, storage in the lockers, and promote my business. And bring more people. This is that. So it's nothing changed. And the place will be open for everybody, not only for the members.
So you've got a member, they brought a guest and they're having a sandwich and they're having a cigar and tasting something to drink. If Mrs. All comes in with
they want to be part of us.
with Mr. Buzak and they want to sit down and
Yeah.
try cigars
Very
right
well.
next to them, is there
Very,
anything?
very
preventing
welcome. That happened. Yeah, that happened in the cigar lounge. What you want, my friend.
Well,
talk
now you're distinguishing that members are allowed to have the food and drink. If Mr. Buzak and Ms. Saul want to, if they brought a bagged lunch in or they got one across the street from Enzo's, are you going to let them sit there and eat?
Yeah. I can say no. Maybe I can share my food with him.
But in terms of the status of people who are bringing you repeat business, you want to officially tell them that they can do this so that they feel comfortable? Is that the idea? As a sales technique?
The thing is, they don't want to go like with the group, like they having food and thing, and they want to share. They just respect, like, well, they're welcome to sit next to me, but it's not allowed to bring the guy.
Well, I'm sure the board will have their own questions on this point, but I guess the idea that everybody just wants to make sure about is you're not creating like a 2-tier system, like where the regular customers, the ones that you're approved to do, are being shortchanged in some way because there's also now this membership option.
No, it's open for everybody. It's not.
Okay, and you said the frequency of these events that you're hoping to host, if you're permitted to, it's not guaranteed, but you're hoping that you'll be allowed to do it once a month?
1 or 2. You're not allowed.
Okay, the HVAC system, the Blue Ox system that we gave testimony about previously to get approved, okay? We went over and we had an engineer here and we talked about its capacity. How many persons does each one of your 2 ventilation systems, if everybody was smoking at the same time, how many people can it accommodate? Each one?
It's over 40 people. They
So-
can smoke in this one time. 40 people can smoke.
So with both of them, they will still filter out the air properly and allow the fire equipment to work and everything?
Each one, 40 people. They can
Each.
smoke there.
So a total of
Oh,
80
yes.
people can be smoking in the venue and it's, the air quality will still be the same?
Yeah.
And you're asking to have up to 49 or 50 people, not 80, right? Maximum. for an
40.
event.
40 people is fine. No? I wish I had at least a half.
Okay,
I think it's not 40 people in the block.
okay. Has everybody seen the pictures of the lounge and everything? So, there's something like, what, 25, 30 seats in there?
20.
20.
22 people can sit there.
So I know that during the events that you've had, people have been mostly standing up, but let's say everybody wants to sit down. How are you going to accommodate for the events, the additional seating requirements?
They just walk around.
You have,
And I can provide some folding tape or a chair. But nobody asked for that. People is just walking around, smoking in the smoking area.
Do you have folding chairs in the back that you can bring out in the event that they're needed?
I have 4.
Okay.
I'm sorry, what was the, I didn't get the answers. Yeah, you have
4?
four.
Folding chairs.
4 chairs.
Okay.
So right now you have seating for at least 24 people. If the board wants you to have seating for whatever number of people they're gonna let you have in an event, you'll get the additional seating.
Yeah, if they need it.
Okay, there's also been a concern raised, I think, by the public or by somebody about people smoking outside and smoking in the cafe area, which you've also applied for the cafe sidewalk license. In these events, you're not gonna let anyone smoke outside, correct?
Nobody smokes outside.
And,
Well,
and you
those are-
now have a sign too for your patrons to make sure that no one does that?
yeah, in the back, I had the sign, no smoking allowed.
Okay. And on the sidewalk, how many seats do you have for people to utilize outdoors in the front?
Outside, I have 2 chairs.
2 chairs. And you're seeking a sidewalk cafe permit for those chairs?
The apply was like for 4 chairs.
But for right now, no one's gonna be smoking outside at all unless you get that approval.
Okay.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, and just the parking for the events. You've had a little bit of uptick in your business, as you told the board, but have you noticed a greater need for parking, or have there been people that have been having trouble parking that come into your store?
Yeah, stolen with the parking. It's people walking. I only have like 3 customers, they always go with the car. But the other people just live around, they just walk.
Has anybody complained to you about the air quality outside the shop at any point?
No. Only when, if somebody's smoking outside, people can say something, but if people are smoking inside, nobody can smell.
Everything that you're asking for is supplemental to your primary use of retail cigar sales?
What's the name?
Are you trying to change your business, or is everything
no.
that you're asking to do?
It's the same. I don't try to change.
All right, so I would open it up to questions from the board. I think we addressed at least broadly everything that's on the table.
I just had a few questions. I'm a little bit confused. You say members are allowed to bring in guests, but the store is open to the public. So that means anybody can come in. So I didn't understand why that was any different if you're a member or not a member.
The member, because they have the locker.
The locker, I understand.
And they can put the whatever
Right,
they
that
over
I
there.
saw was different.
And they pay for that membership. They pay something extra, right?
Right.
The other people, if it's open for everybody, bring food, bring liquor, whatever they want, make party over there. I had to clean whatever so I had to keep only what I have is 20 people in the locker, 20 people maximum. And if you have the locker, you have that privilege.
Right.
Just to bring something and leave your glass over there and I can clean it for you. But if you know that privilege, you want to bring me food things and I have to clean for you for 1 cigar.
So if I come in with a member, we'll do that for me, even though I'm not a member. I guess that's the difference.
So there's like a convenience and an incentive that he's gonna give you some white glove service, and you're allowed to do these things without asking. And you also keep your cigars, and if you have some beverage or something in the locker, so you don't have to bring it in with you. So it's convenience and it's incentive. You know, maybe it's more convenient for you to bring a friend at lunch. You don't have to bring a box of cigars and something.
Just a couple of questions. So you talked about, is there any issue, I don't know who's the right one to answer, but if there's liquor served there without a liquor license?
It's BYO. Honestly, I wouldn't even begin to answer that question because I'm really not.
It's
100%
just
sure
a
how that
sale of
works.
liquor, right? You can't sell liquor.
You can't
but-
sell it, correct?
Right.
I think if they bought their own,
Is that how it is? So you don't sell it, they bring their own?
I don't sell it, I don't serve liquor, it's like,
So it falls under that bring your own law,
That's fine.
just like a restaurant. There are certain limitations to that, of course, not for what he's doing.
And then lastly, if people bring in food and, you know, whatever, that seems to be a garbage issue, so, you know, how is that handled? Do you have a contract with a commercial?
I have the dump truck for the same owner, the owner of the, I can put it there, and the,
You're allowed to use
Yeah,
that, and then he pays for the
yeah,
commercial.
he
Okay.
pays.
Perfect. Thank you.
Allison, but it's really for, I mean, is there a maximum amount of people in that particular space? Is there
That's a fire.
Fire code? Yeah, there must,
Fire, yeah,
the maximum occupancy.
that would be fire.
and
And
we
I'm
don't,
sure you probably.
I'm
It's
just-
49,
Yes,
right?
something posted.
49.
No, that was they had 49 under the ordinance, I think, for meetings or something that you guys said instead of 50. so you
Changed
count-
into a different group.
But in terms of
If
the
you don't
occupancy,
bring occupancy.
Yeah.
I don't recall, but I think it's well over 150 people occupancy for that space, that footage.
so he could have 150 customers in there at one time, and that's allowed under.
I think it's more than that, but it's certainly that.
Well, there's, I
Oh
think
my
there's,
The fire department, the
I
fire
think
department said to limit it to 49.
well, I think there's two different, we're talking about
The
two.
occupancy
I think.
versus the fire thing are
Right.
two different levels.
Yeah.
So he would have to limit the events to 49 based on their
Right.
guidance.
Mhm.
But that's far short of the number of total people you can have in. The difference is if you're smoking cigars with 49 people, that's a little different than just having 100 people standing in line.
Yeah.
Where is the, you said the landlord has an overflow lot. Where is that lot located?
It's in front of my building, behind the, I don't know. The one?
Oh, so behind the
The vehicle
businesses.
behind that.
And what time would you have these events? Would they be occurring throughout at any time on the weekends or just at night? And
The
when do you?
event?
Yeah, the events. When would you anticipate having?
People ask me, it's like, if it's your birthday, next Friday, it's okay to have the event, I decided the day.
He means the time
No,
of
the
day.
time.
At the time, it's 7 p.m. after 7.
Okay. And Tasty Buddy or Taste Buddy, that's next door to you?
Yeah.
Do you ever talk to them? Like, what's that relationship like?
Excellent.
Okay, so they haven't reported.
No, because
issues.
she closed at 3 p.m., 3 or 4.
Would you consider, as a condition of sort of granting the extension, agreeing that events can only happen after 7 p.m. and that you would give notice to anyone having an event about the overflow parking across the street?
I think after they close, it's okay. So they close
Yeah,
at
no,
4.
but there's an issue of potentially not knowing that there are the parking across the street. So what I'm contemplating is two conditions of approval of, hey, events will only happen at 7 or later. And when somebody books an event, I will encourage them or I'll tell them about the overflow parking behind the building. As a just a way of creating awareness, because otherwise they might not be aware and driving around and things like that.
Oh, he would tell his customer.
Yeah, you would tell your customer,
Okay,
like,
yeah, that
hey,
happened.
I understand.
Yeah,
thanks for booking this event, can you please tell your guests that if there's no parking.
that happened before. I told this guy behind the building, you can park there, it's enough space. So, yeah. That's part of the deal with the event. They have parking.
So are you okay with those then?
Yeah, I'm okay.
So you're having events that are up to 2 hours long and people are drinking alcohol and smoking cigars and consuming food. Can you speak to restrooms? Like there is a restroom, I believe, but is that just private, retail that's not always intended for
That one,
the
my
customers?
place have a restaurant. Yeah.
Okay, so it's a restroom that you make available to customers
yeah,
as needed?
yeah.
Okay. And is that also what you would use, you have a staff break room separate that you would use to sort of clean, like you mentioned, if people leave glasses or whatever, you're gonna clean it, you have a separate area for
When
that
is
as well?
the
He has
event
a
like that?
kitchen and he has a separate staff room, which is really his office, but he has those two areas.
Okay, so you have separate state areas, but thank you.
I just have a question. So in the event, there are 20 people eating, drinking, there
there might be potential to have music. And I'm assuming because the retail storefront is first and the lounge in the back, that the sound control is restricted. The speaker is this side. It's nothing like.
The two rooms are separated by a glass door. that can
And I
be
have the
closed.
glass separate, it's totally, you can hear nothing outside.
That dampens the sound if there is any. Of course, you know, if there's gonna be some music, you would just have to close
And
that.
the other thing is about those kind of event is people go there just to talk. This is not a party, it's just to talk and smoke cigar and it's not a bar.
Go ahead.
Somebody had mentioned outdoor spaces and you didn't finish that, like unless we grant outdoor spaces. So can you talk to that just a little bit? Because I see somebody smoking a cigar and meeting some air and going out and having, you know, chatting. Not that I'm against it, I just want you to talk more on that.
I'm gonna let my client give his testimony. I just wanna note that when we started doing this application in March, one of the things that came up was, we wanna make sure people aren't just wandering outside smoking cigars out in front of the store in case that would impact any other business. So he put no smoking signs up and, outside, no smoking outside signs up, which are in the package. And right now today, do people go outside to smoke?
I sit in the front, just two guys, because I have two chairs in the front. And we can smoke after the place next to us is closed. We don't bother everybody. So,
And you're seeking permission to have
and the four chair and two tables.
And two
the
tables.
sidewalk cafe
Yeah,
put
two
there.
tables.
But during
You're-
events
Are
though,
you seeking that from this or that's
He does
separate?
not have a sidewalk cafe license at this time.
Okay, that's, I just wanna make sure that we understand that that's a separate
Right.
application.
and
from
right
what's
now,
here.
so right now, no one's allowed to go out and smoke outside at this time.
No.
And during events in particular, you're not gonna let people go outside and smoke during events at all.
Yeah, it's not allowed. People don't go outside, so I would like to have, permit to have like people sitting outside, like 2 people, 3 people sitting outside in the nice weather to smoke cigar, if we don't bother anybody.
So that'll be if he gets the cafe permit, but he does have the seating outside now that's available for that, if it's granted.
I'm sorry, say that again.
He has 2 seats right now outside and a little table right in front of the store that are available if he gets the permission for people to go outside, just during the day when he's got his normal business.
But that would be a separate cafe.
It's not before,
That's
this
not
board.
before us.
That is not before you at this time, no.
Well,
But the
I'm
problem
I'm
is if the
confused
town
here.
separately grants the application for the outside tables, which I think can be up to 6 tables probably,
Right
that
now,
can get granted, we're losing control of that. And now they would be having 6
Right
tables,
now-
4 tables, 10 people at each table, or 8 people at each table.
Well,
right
he doesn't
now,
have
the
that from our
cafe
permit.
license.
I'm just saying that's,
Yeah. Right now, he doesn't
it's
qualify.
one thing
for the cafe
granting it, it's
license.
another controlling it.
Because the cafe license, as I understand currently, is only open to establishments that serve food and drink. Which is why he doesn't.
Okay. Deborah, question.
But if somebody wanted to sit outside, it's 70, 80, 90 degrees outside, and they want to sit outside in that chair and smoke a cigar, they can do it.
It's probably, I'm sure it happened, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
I don't-
I don't think there's a restriction, but there isn't
No,
any
I
kind
can't
of like,
imagine there would have been.
but he doesn't have like specific permission from any source right now to do that.
Deborah?
I hoping you can clarify. So in the amendment for the application, F states, applicant notes that the shop is not a cigar lounge nor social club, and the purpose of the shop is not for socialization. So I'm wondering if you can define socialization, because it sounds to me like there's a lot of socializing that's gonna be happening. Because you have seating for people and outdoors and, you know, you're gonna have these events and stuff. So I'm not really understanding how this is not for socialization and therefore a different use than just retail sales.
So in the beginning, we had this sampling area, so people can go there and smoke, and 4 or 5 people, that's the idea, socialize. That's.
Okay, but you weren't talking about holding events, it sounds like in now, I guess it's just that you very specifically state it's not for socialization. And now you're talking about having events for private members and the public, and
Yeah,
so that's what isn't quite jiving for me, like I don't quite understand how you're defining socialization
Because now we
in
want
this
that.
use.
We're distinguishing that, unlike a bar with a cover charge, that people aren't coming in there to attend a social event. They're coming to buy cigars, and in the process of buying the cigars, they're gonna interact with Puerto Rico, and they might interact with somebody else, especially the people that are bringing someone with them to also purchase cigars. So naturally, there's gonna be some socialization. And I guess you could say sales is a social process. You're talking to someone about a product that you're interested in. And people that are interested in the same product that are in a store may talk about the product. But as distinguished from that being the primary reason for coming or what you're paying for. So maybe you could describe like.
Because I just want to, because it says right here, the shop will host private events for members, the shop will host public events for the community. So that sounds to me like it's more than just retail sales.
Well,
That's what-
it's a sales event. He's sold 60 boxes of cigars. It'd be like if I had a wine tasting and I deliver you guys all a nice Pinot Grigio and I have 10 bottles in a box. There's a social aspect to that, but I'm selling wine.
Okay,
You know,
so-
I'm not inviting you guys all to pay a cover charge so that everybody can have a glass of wine and kind of chit chat. I'm selling wine.
So you're saying that it will host private retail events? Is that, the retail is not in here, but it sounds like that's what
Yeah, at the store.
Because there's a big difference between private events and private retail events.
That language will be fine. It's a private retail event where he's being introduced to new customers from his existing clientele, and he's gonna give them certain product that night to sample, like I would with the wine tasting example. Whoever wanted to.
No, I just heard testimony before that the last two you had of the year were birthday parties. And so how is that not a social event?
Well, I understand when you say that social event, what, if I have the birthday party, the event, it's a social event. It's a social event.
But then it changes the use, that's the point. So it's
Well,
not
if he's
just a
selling-
retail sales event, it's changing the use of the store.
At the birthday party, did you sell any cigars?
He said he sold 60 cigars.
Yeah.
So at the birthday party, somebody had a birthday party and at that birthday party you sold cigars?
Yeah.
So there was a retail aspect.
There is, right?
Right, there is a retail aspect.
There's a dual aspect, and the primary one is this retail aspect. People are coming, it's my birthday, or last week, I'm gonna have people come to the shop that I like, and I'm gonna introduce you guys, and he's gonna have a special, and you guys are gonna buy cigars from him. That's different than, me having a birthday party. You're not expected to buy anything, you're coming to see me socially, and that's it, and that's the primary thing. So, yeah, there is a social aspect to having cigar sales, but that's not the primary reason for it.
If I could maybe add some clarification, is that I think the membership is what throws the social event. So you're not trying to form a social club.
No.
So that, I think that's where the confusion might lie, is that getting rid of the membership piece and making it more of, calling it something else with a locker, more of a white glove service. Because when you get into a social club, it's really about exclusive members, socially a club, where in this case, I agree that a birthday party, it's a marketing technique. I'm gonna invite my friend so I can help him sell more cigars. So that, I think that's the confusion of membership versus non-membership or social club. And, definition.
I guess that would be for them to clarify if that was your question.
Right.
Yeah.
You're right, 100%.
Right? I mean, am I right?
Yeah.
So eliminating the member piece of it, because it's not a social event. So everybody who has a locker doesn't meet there at the same time and socially meet.
So you're saying the word membership is almost like maybe
It
coming
means
up with a
almost like
different term,
a
like
social club.
locker something or
Yes.
premier status offering,
Right. Right. And so that's the social.
versus
that's the
calling
club.
it membership because that has a different connotation.
Right, I think we're we're toggling and are sort of struggling with this concept of, are we defining it? Are we considering, this use or retail sales? That's what the retail sales, right, retail sales, retail service is one and the same. Is it retail versus is it food and beverage or lounge or some other use, which would be outside of, what we can discuss, sort of. So you're presenting your case or discussion of how this is going to continue to be a retail use.
Yeah,
But
and I
with
think
social events as sort of part of an extension or a tool to increase.
yeah, he's talking about having an event 1 or 2 times a month to drum up some business. And this other thing with the lockers is to encourage customers to come and bring new people to the shop so he can sell more cigars. Versus if he was actually selling a social experience, which is something totally different than what he's doing.
Okay, Sujata.
So I'm missing something. What you're really saying is it's a loyalty tool to be able to have the cigar box or locker. It is a loyalty technique, not really a social.
membership.
Not a social technique, right? Like you're subscribing to a premier status at a mileage club type thing. It's a loyalty.
When we were talking about it before, I was comparing it to like Delta Sky Miles, like how you can bring a guest to the lounge if you have that, and how you get some credits for your next flight, and you get advanced rewards or notification of promotions, and that's exactly what he's trying to do with the lockers.
Okay.
I've got some questions. Some follow-ups. The photos that are attached to the application, that's the existing seating area now?
Yeah.
Okay. And you said that's 20 seats?
Yeah.
Plus the folded two folded
Four-
chairs?
four.
Four folded chairs, okay.
It's
Following up,
less than 26, but it's like a couch. You can fit
Couches.
like 20 people in.
now, are those seats in that area, was that permissible under the original grant from the board?
Yeah.
It was, okay.
Sampling area.
I don't think so.
area.
But anyway, just a question, these are just questions. Following up on one of Mr. Diller's questions about when these public events are going to occur. The current shop is open from 7 a.m. until 7 p.m., 7 days a week, correct?
No, 7 a.m. No. 12.
Sorry, 11 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Yeah, 12. It's
Well,
open.
it's
12:30 to 7.
And the application is to extend Monday through Wednesday night, you want to extend it to 9 p.m.
Yep.
So that's 7 to 9 for those parties then. And then Thursday through Saturday, you want to extend it till 10 p.m.
Yep.
And then Sunday through 7 p.m., correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then the extra parking you're talking about that's across the street, kind of behind either the Bagel Pantry or Enzo's, that's public parking lot you're talking about?
This is a private. This is the owner of the building.
How many spaces?
Maybe like 40. Yeah, you can fit like 40 cars.
So there's 40
Yeah,
private
yeah,
spaces beyond there?
yeah.
Okay. And do you know whether they're used by other tenants or just available?
In the morning, yeah. They use in the morning for those, the Bagel Pantry, he close at 2:30. The other place close at 4, so after that.
Okay. And if you're granted this application, your intention would be to, if the town grants you a license to have the sidewalk cafe, your intention would be to allow people to smoke out there as well? when
That
there's
was
these
like,
events?
the intention for me is like to have like four chair outside. Yeah,
Okay, that's all I have, thank you.
That's fine. I just want to clarify one of those questions, which is about the use of that lot behind the retail across the street. I don't believe it's not a private lot. I think that's, anybody can access
Yes, it
that
is.
driveway.
I think there's
or
a
it
portion
is-
that's private.
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
The Keller Williams office
okay.
is
It's
owned by
private,
the
so-
same owner.
Bruce Jeffrey.
That's Bruce Jeffrey's lot. Yes, it is. There's private spots back there. There's a
Okay.
dumpster as well, but
There are
there's definitely
spots
private
labeled.
spots. Absolutely.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you for clarifying.
The only clarification, I'll ask you this then, those spots though are shared by a number of tenants, commercial tenants, not just you.
Yeah,
Okay.
just, yeah.
But the bulk of it is the real estate company. That's the Keller Williams office uses the bulk of it. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so that's a potentially good shared parking model. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, if we have no questions from the board for this witness, I will open it to questions from the public. I just want to make sure. Okay.
One more
Okay.
on parking for employees. So you stated before that you're the sole employee, now you're gonna have two?
Just me, and when I had the event, another guy
So
to help.
somebody else,
just
okay, I'm just
somebody.
worried about parking permits, right, because that was one of the conditions for the original as well. Are you willing to purchase then a parking permit for your?
For the employer, yeah, I'm okay.
Go ahead, Sujata.
So I have a question, since the events are going to be in the evening, do we? That was my question.
You don't need a parking permit for evening events.
Yeah.
No, because the parking,
Ends at 6, I think.
So then the condition though has to be that it's only evening events, because if it happens during the day, then you need, right?
well, I guess my question is, if somebody, and you'll have to tell me this, if somebody is having an event once a month or twice a month, why is it, if it's a 2-hour event, do they have to buy a parking permit? Why can't they?
So
I'm just curious, when we allow for parking in other parking spots, we allow for 3 hours at a clip. There's no reason why if it's only once or twice a month, you would need another parking permit. I assume you have a parking permit since you're full-time and they're 7 days a week. However, I can't imagine an event you'd have to buy a parking permit for someone. That just doesn't make sense to me.
I get that. And the once a month, he said he wants it once a week. He also stated before in this that there were only gonna be 3 to 4 patrons at most in the shop at a time, and now it's 7, 20 a day. No food or drink will be served. It's gonna be served. Customer traffic's anticipated, you have to be in and out. The store will be strictly carry-out business. All this stuff, like he's an
It's changing.
entrepreneur, it's changing.
Sure.
So to take that, you gotta take it with a grain of salt. Just put the conditions in there that if he does have it and he does change his business hours, just, purchase a parking permit.
Yeah, Mr. Apple, your point's well taken. If there's gonna be an expansion of use, my client's willing to, go the mile to get the, parking permit for this individual. It's not a problem.
Yeah, no, that's, yeah.
You can ask a question.
One more question, it's about the refuse disposal. So you're gonna be having more events. People may be bringing in food and drinks, you're talking about maybe having up to 50 people. And I know that you said that you can utilize the commercial building's rear dumpster, but it also says, this is in the resolution, the original resolution, that the store will not generate excess or atypical refuse, and that in the event any special care garbage is generated, arrangements will be made to properly dispose of the same. So I'm just wondering what that will be, what those arrangements will be to properly dispose if there is excess garbage beyond what the dumpster in the back between you and Taste Buddy, if it's full, what you would do.
I don't share the garbage with those, because that's a restaurant, they have a lot of garbage. For me, I only have one bag like every 2 days. And when I had the event, I put the garbage in the dumpster behind my building. It's part of the same owner, so, and they pay for that. So I just drop my garbage in the dumpster, in the back, by the parking.
Okay, I'm just wondering if hopefully if you're getting more and more people coming to these retail events where there's more food and drink, you may exceed what the dumpster can hold, and it's just says here that, you're gonna make arrangements. So I'm just wondering if you've thought about what those arrangements might
No, the
entail.
idea is just to pay the garbage company, the new garbage company in September 18, they start, because they don't wanna pick up the garbage. My garbage is one bag. If I had to pay, it's like, I think it's like $30, $40 a month,
Okay.
so I can do that.
So it sounds like that's the arrangement then.
Yeah.
I'm just wanting to hear what the specifics are. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Joseph, you wanted to clarify something?
Yes.
Okay.
It's interesting, this application is just raising a number of broader issues that I think we need to put in context. We don't control the use of these operations. An applicant comes before us and they provide testimony as to what they're gonna do there. The determination as to whether that is a permitted or non-permitted use is not this board. We don't make that determination. The zoning officer makes that determination. We put this information in the resolution because it's information that the applicant has provided to us to try to explain what they are doing. But for example, had he come here the first time and said, I'm gonna do all of this, this resolution wouldn't have all of that information in it. It would have this information in it.
Right.
When considering site plan approvals, you know, there's standards in the ordinance, and in this kind of situation, where you have a change in, initially, there was a change in use, I think, from what it was before. The only thing that we really dealt with and had to deal with was the variance. Do we grant a variance to allow for 9 spaces? And all of this information that's in here, I suspect, to some extent, was intended in part to influence or persuade the board that, look, we really don't need 9 spaces. Of course, the reality is there are no spaces. That's the way it is in the downtown. So, you know, that's a whole other issue. The point is that's the only thing, probably the only thing that we had control over. The use, we can't say to them, oh, you know what, you can do this, even though the ordinance doesn't allow you to do it. That's not for us. That's the use variance. He's got to go before the Board of Adjustment. So all of these things, if he wants to have an event, if we don't think that that's a permitted use, we have to ship them off to the Board of Adjustment. We can't say, oh, you can do that, oh, you can do this once a week, but you can't do it twice a week. You can do this once a month, but you can't do it twice a month. You can't do it 4 times a month. You can't do it 10 times a month. You can't do it every day. We don't have that kind of control. We're trying to ascertain that information, but we're trying to ascertain it in the context, I think, of parking. That's really all we're talking about. So when we start talking about, like, what are you gonna do and how many seats you're gonna have, it's all gotta be related to the parking. Unless at some point Eileen, who happens to be the zoning officer, says, hey, wait a minute, folks, we're going beyond what is permitted in the zone. So now, if you want to do all of this, we need to stop the application and send it over to the Board of Adjustment. We're getting into the weeds here, literally, and
Not really.
Hopefully not.
we don't. Let's joke. This is a cigar store. But don't be surprised if we may have another change in use. We will be getting into the weeds. So I'm just concerned about putting in a whole variety of conditions of, well, you can have an event once a week, or you can have 15 seats in there, but that's all. Unless it's tied to parking.
So like the condition of having the event after a certain time and notifying of parking is sort of the intent is tied to the parking.
Yes, as Mr. Biller said, that's tied to the parking issues. But other than that, I don't want us, it's not within the board's jurisdiction. It's not whether I want it or don't want it. It's not within the board's jurisdiction to start telling this applicant what he can do, what he can't do, if he's permitted to do it. If he's permitted to do it, he's permitted to do it. And we don't, you know, we can't control that. And, you know, the applicant, to his credit, made representations before us and recognized, you know, they were made in good faith and recognized that, or maybe was told, I don't know, that, you know, you're going beyond what you said you were going to do there, so you need to come back and get this thing straightened out. And that's what he's doing here. But I just don't want the board to be under the illusion that we can start to control his business in what he does. he can do whatever the zoning ordinance allows him to do in that premise. And if there's something that we see that he's not allowed to do, we can't let him do it. And we can't say, well, if you do it once, it's okay, but if you do it 10 times, it's not okay. That's beyond us here. Okay?
So then,
Good, well, okay,
So let me go ahead.
So, right now, the way it's operating, because he's basically violating some of the conditions of this planning board's approval. So that's why my understanding of why he was coming here, to have those conditions eliminated, removed, or,
Right.
honed a little.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, when you look at the resolution, we have all that stuff there,
Yeah.
he represents this, represents that, represents, but at the end, where it says, now therefore be it resolved, we grant the variances, and we have 3 or 4, we don't have specific conditions, unless I missed it in
Except
this
that the
resolution.
testimony provided.
He made
you know,
representations of what he's gonna do, and we have that generic clause at the end that says the applicant shall be bound to comply with all the representations
Right.
made.
which
So,
would be
so
nice.
that is here.
Right.
But
Or does he come back and argue the whole case all over again, not making those representations? So you're saying they're not conditions that can technically be removed?
that's right, they're not those
They
kinds
weren't
of
listed as
conditions.
they were just.
He can come in and clarify, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, we do the other thing.
Got it.
But the only way that we can control that is if it's tied to parking. As Mr. Bill just said, you know.
so
we're-
having these social things, at certain
Right, at a
hours,
certain time,
letting people
because
know.
there is no parking, and we're willing to grant the variance for that. And he's expressed what his activities are going to be, and they appear to generate more parking practically, not under the ordinance, because the ordinance doesn't distinguish between those if it's retail. So yes, that's the case. So I just want to be careful here about what we're doing, or what we can do.
Appreciate that. Okay, before I go to Mr. Cosgrove, so Eileen, I guess, we just heard sort of that clarification you need, but based on what Ed just shared, are we still in retail? From what you've heard, like, are you saying, okay, whoa, like you mentioned, this is no longer a planning board issue?
Well, one of the biggest things, and I'm not really hung up so much on events, because like I said, there's a lot of retail vendors who have events that
Right.
we don't get involved in parking associated with events, because it's, however, they're obviously not gonna start off with events if it's gonna affect their regular customers. But this shop will offer membership options where members are permitted to utilize the cigar lounge area, which was not part of the original approval as I remember it. So is in now a cigar lounge area, and so I guess my biggest concern is that, while we're happy that your business is thriving, but we want to make sure that it's following the right course of action. And this board ruled on the sale of cigars, which specified that there would be no lingering, there would be no area for people to stay on site. It was just gonna be in and out. And does that rise to a level of, is it ancillary to the retail sale? I don't have a lot of information on that as far as what portion is the retail and what is gonna be cigar lounge. or
Yeah, so Eileen, there's no
membership only.
cigar lounge of any type. What he has and what is exactly what he had at the beginning is he has a sampling area. So people in the front, he's got all the display cases with all the cigars, and in the back is a sampling area that we went into great detail in the initial application to explain that the sampling area would be the only area where people would be smoking, and that's where those machines are set up to rehabilitate the air. And so everyone has access to that area. If you want to buy a box of cigars and you want to sample the cigar and smoke a half of the cigar in the area that's designated, which is the back area of the store, everybody, whether they're a member or just somebody coming in to buy a cigar, is free to do that. And it's part of selling cigars in general. So he's not making a change there. The only difference is that, like you said, people might be lingering And we hadn't initially anticipated them lingering for longer than like however long it takes to smoke a cigar, because people smoke cigars at different speeds, but I mean, to me, it probably is gonna take me 15, 20 minutes to smoke a cigar. I mean, I don't know, some people can do it a lot quicker, but.
I'd like to ask a question. There's a cigar store, I guess, in Summit. There's JR's maybe somewhere
In
else.
Hoboken,
There's, in all of these, they're all retail stores, correct?
yes, and they all have the
And there's
same
something on Bloomfield Avenue, is that JR's or maybe not, maybe something on Route 10. I guess what I'm asking is, in all of these retail stores where they're selling cigars, do they also, would you know, have places for people to also sit? I know they do in Summit, because my husband has bought cigars there, he's not allowed to buy them anymore.
Do I know me?
But this was before, he doesn't get to smoke them anymore. Anyway, the point is, I know that he would go to these stores, or that one store I know in Summit. I don't know, or do any of the other stores that sell cigars the way you do offer the same type of smoking area as it called? All the stores. So yours is not unusual.
Yeah.
Yours is just
All
like
the
every other store that sells cigars.
They
Okay.
opened 2 new ones right there, like La Casa del Tabaco in Newark. It's like 3
Right,
floors.
it's true. We don't
There's
know
a-
what those are approved for.
We don't know what they're approved for. However, I'm just curious. I don't
Yeah,
smoke
I
cigars, but I know real estate, so I can talk about real estate, but I can't talk about cigars. So I just know that other cigar people probably know what their competition is, and do those competitors, are they set up the same way as you are? That was my
Right, we
question.
don't know how they're.
What they're, we
jurisdiction
don't,
is
we
what
don't.
are, yeah, focused
That's
on.
true,
it's a
but-
good- I understand your question.
So I have a question related to retail establishments. Mr. Buzak, perhaps you could help with this. So the Short Hills Mall, is that considered a retail establishment?
Yes, it's with-
Yeah,
It's a shopping
I guess
center.
it's a shopping
center.
center.
So they
yeah.
have
It's a
that
shopping
whole
center.
center area where they have couches, benches, et cetera, where people sit while others are shopping, or sometimes they shop, they sit. Does that change the nature of the mall, or does it continue as a retail establishment because they linger there?
Well, I think that's Eileen's point, the primary use is retail. These other amenities that they have where people may sit or, those are all amenities, they're all accessory. And the question here, and I think that's what Eileen is, I don't want to say struggling with, but perhaps we're all struggling with it, is, when do you go over the line where it's no longer retail? And, I was thinking about it as we were all talking about it, and that smoking area is like a try-on area. Okay, in a retail store, you go in a retail store, which you go to the dressing room, you try this on, and you try that on, you try this on, you try that on, whatever. And, this is sort of the functional equivalent of, I think, of
Trying on a
part
cigar.
of retail. You don't necessarily just go in and buy
The
the
sampling
thing.
area,
You try it on,
Yeah.
you see how it looks on you,
Right.
whatever.
which we knew about the sampling area. That was all-
Yeah, sampling, yeah. So, but a sampling area is related to, sort of directly related to the retail.
Absolutely.
You take the thing off the rack, you wanna see if it fits, you wanna see how it looks, you do it and that's it. This aspect that's what this was. It was a sampling area, you go in, you wanna try a cigar, see what it tastes like, whatever you do with cigars. And decide, yes, I want this one, or no, I want, give me a case of these or a box of these or whatever. But now it's beyond that. Now that's part of it, but it's not going in there for that reason. It's going in and now you can stay there. You don't hang around a dressing room, and just hang out.
Yeah, it's not a yours.
If you do.
Well, that's another issue.
We
But
got problems.
you don't do that. Here, you're gonna do that. You can do that.
That's the
And the idea is to have people come in and be able to lounge there, but also buy merchandise.
I think that's it. I mean, I think if
that's it.
people aren't buying merchandise and the
He's
retail
gonna-
sales aren't happening, then the business
gonna-
won't
right,
succeed.
he's gonna
So
kick it
that's still, that
Yeah,
is still the
without that,
primary
I can
purpose.
succeed. If the people can stay there and get small, try the cigar,
and not buy.
I'm not buying, so how I can pay the rent?
Right, so the retail remains the core business model. Okay.
So what I'm
Okay.
still hung up on is, when we make a motion, what is the motion gonna be? Because we're talking about parking, and this application has nothing to do with parking. This is an amendment to the original resolution. Are we allowed to do that?
Well, we're doing, and this again was Graham's point, now I see it clearer than I did when I looked at it originally. And that is, does this change of use generate, change the basis upon which we would consider granting a variance? And I'm not sure it does or it doesn't, because it's still 9 spaces, no matter what. And when you look at it, it's not, the spaces haven't increased.
Right.
But, the board may feel, well, no, there's gonna be so much activity there that we can't grant any variance for that, because you need to provide parking for these people that are going to be generated, and therefore we don't grant a variance, which means then he can't do what he's asking to do,
I understand.
because that's, because we're not
David, I know
granting
you have a
variance.
question, but I just want to repeat Gaston's question, which is, we received this amendment of the application. Do we have the jurisdiction to do that? Is this within, are the things that they're asking something that we can do?
Well,
as the planning board?
Yeah, this was structured, I mean, it's almost structured like an agreement, and that's really not what this is. We don't enter into agreements with applicants, we grant, this is a
Right,
minor
grant
site
approval.
plan approval
Right,
and a variance. That's what we're doing.
so that's what we could
And
grant.
the minor site plan is for this use to occur. Now, look, there's other towns where there's uses, change of uses do not come under site plans. They don't see them at all.
Okay,
Because it's either a permitted use or it's not a permitted use. And if the site plan's already been granted, you don't need to come in again and.
right, but to the
explain
point
what
of,
we're doing.
you mentioned they're coming in good faith, they're saying, we are doing we are wanting to do some of the things that it does state in here we may
Right.
not do. We want to clarify that.
Yeah, and we would put all of that in the resolution if the board is going to grant it. We set forth the basis upon which we are granting
Okay.
the site plan approval,
Gotcha.
amended site plan approval, and more importantly, the variance, if we're going to grant the variance.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Did you have a comment
Yeah,
or
just
question?
a statement and a question from Mr. Buzak. The statement to the board really is the variance that was granted, the way I see this, is a parking variance, among other things. And to get that parking variance back then, part of the consideration by the board was there's not gonna be anybody at this place long-term. So I don't know that it's just Mr. Biller's comment about, the parking, making sure they know there's parking across the street, because the grant was because, and I'm not saying what you folks are gonna do, I'm not gonna get you to vote on this one, but the grant was, I'll give you the parking variance because there's not gonna be people there, there's not gonna be a parking problem, even though we know there's no parking spaces probably anyway. But so I don't think it's as simple, I disagree with Mr. Buzak that it's as simple as, it's a change of use. It's not a change of use, there's a variance, and they're trying to change the terms under which that variance was granted.
But what's the basis upon which you're saying that the variance is granted for the reasons that you have? Because I didn't see that in the resolution.
Well, I think it's the whole resolution, but this is my question to you, that paragraph 5 at the end, which you mentioned yourself, at page 7, it says, the applicant shall be bound to comply with all representations made before the board by the applicant and the applicant's witnesses during the course of the hearing, et cetera, et cetera. And same are incorporated herein and are representations upon which this board has relied in granting the approvals set forth. It is a term and condition. And my question to you was, I think I'm hearing you saying that paragraph 5 in the thing is not enforceable, which I don't think you're saying that, but I want some
No,
clarification.
I'm not saying that.
Because page
Okay.
3,
No, no.
paragraph 5 has,
Pardon me?
paragraph 5 on page 3
Has all the things.
has everything that he testified to. And that's how this was brought to me by others who, brought certain issues to my attention. And that's how this whole thing got started. I said, hey, okay, if you're not following all this, then you need to go back to the board and you need to
Get permission.
clarify, that these were things that you testified to, but it's not actually happening that way.
And I guess the question is, don't then we have the opportunity to decide if given all these changes, it still merits the parking variance?
I think that is what we are.
And so then it doesn't mean we can, it's not how many events or whether that's what we're looking, but only in terms of, so we're granting a new variance, I guess, based on the new facts.
New conditions, yeah, new assumptions.
Or
new
like-
conditions, yeah.
Amendments,
Which-
a little different,
which
as long
of-
as it's not a change of use. Change of use goes to the Board of Adjustment.
Right, that's right, okay.
And I guess depending on what he testified to, whether some of it you may have no issues with, some of it you may have to, I don't know. Like the main one being, the store will strictly be carry out, there will be no there will be no in-store seating will be provided for customers. We knew about the sampling room, which is in that paragraph. So it's just like, and like I said, it could be some of them where you say, okay, well, we're okay with that, we're okay.
Conditions have changed, is what
Right,
it
the
is. Conditions have
circumstances
changed.
of his testimony have changed. So that's where I kind of came into the picture and said, well, you have to kind of speak to this to them because their approval is based on testimony that you gave, which is not really, we just want to make
No
sure that.
longer happening. Okay. Okay.
Well, all of that is correct, but we just have to keep in mind that we don't control the use. We
Right.
control it. So someone looks at the resolution, it is all incorporated, that's what he said he's going to do. But if he comes in and says, no, I'm not gonna do this, I'm going to do something else, or I'm gonna have seats instead of no seats there.
Well, then
We can't say to him, no, you can't have seats.
I can say that to him after the fact, because, well, I mean, my point is if I'm supposed to enforce a resolution that's.
I thought that's a zoning issue.
Exactly. So then I.
I meant, now, yes, you can.
Mhm.
But if he says, I wanna have seats, I don't think we have the ability to say to him, no, you can't have seats there. Unless it's tied to the fact that we're not going to grant the variance. We can tell him you can't have seats in this place. How do you tell him that? We can't. If he says, I wanna put 30 seats in there, he can put 30 seats in there. The consequence may be, well, wait a minute, if you put 30 seats in there, we're not gonna give you a variance to have parking. So now you have a problem because you needed that variance in order to put 30 seats in and do all these other things you wanna do. So that's what this is. Again, it all ties back to the parking variance. Unless he's saying, I wanna do something that you can't do, and then, as I said, we can't allow him to do that anyway.
Yeah.
He's gonna go to the board of adjustment. So, and I know this gets confusing, but we need to tie these activities, again, as Mr. Miller did initially, to the parking issue.
Yes.
Because he's looking for a parking variance for 9 spaces. And the variance was granted, and it was granted based on the totality of what he said he was going to do.
Right.
Now, to the extent that he's changing any of those things, we have to evaluate, or he can testify, but we in the end have to evaluate whether that impacts on whether a variance should be granted for parking.
So for example, asking questions about filtration has no bearing because whether the filtration is good, bad, or indifferent doesn't change the number of parking spaces. Seats, you could make an argument if people are sitting down, they're gonna keep their car there longer, and maybe you need more parking spaces. But most of the things that he said about how his business runs do not impact parking.
Right, I think.
Which
I
is
don't
the
know- I
thrust
don't know
of
if it's
our.
most of them, but
arguments.
the events issues, the membership issues, that tends to increase, which is what he's trying to do.
Right.
Increase the activity that's on site to attract people on the site. And that's good for him, And it's good for us generically, as a municipality, we want businesses to thrive, I would think.
You want them to be able to do that unless it's to someone else's detriment.
Yeah, but on the other hand, we have a parking requirement, and we have to decide whether we're still willing to grant that variance for parking.
You could even make the argument then that if he had poor, if he had super phenomenal filtration, more people will come and it would affect parking. So I mean, you can take that to an extreme.
Yeah,
So,
sure.
I mean, in reality, the filtration has really nothing to do with the park.
Right, I think the filtration aspect testimony that was provided, and he didn't really provide a lot today, other than, the basics. We actually had an expert here, if you recall.
Previously, yeah.
Talking all about that, because there was concern about, what's this gonna do, how's it gonna impact the air outside, how does all of that stuff work, and we had all that testimony, and it's all put in here, so we know that, okay, we're also protecting the other residents of Millburn that don't
Health,
walk in there.
safety, and welfare.
That's correct. But, now I agree with you, that's not
That's
as
not
much of
what
an
it's
issue. Although, you can take it to the extreme that you gave as a hypothetical. Okay, so the point, I think, let me say this. There's some questions that have been asked, and while your testimony has been credible and honest, don't misunderstand what I'm saying here. It's vacillated a little bit in terms of precision. And part of it is because, I suppose, you're not really sure where this is going. You want to be able to hold events, but, is it one event a month? Is it one event a week? And while you may not be able to tell us that, you have to recognize that you have to make some commitment here so that we can then evaluate that, again, as it relates to parking. If you say, look, I'm gonna have one event every night, at 7 o'clock, I'm gonna have an event, or I wanna have the ability to have an event. That's going to have a different effect than if you said, I'm gonna have an event every day at 3 o'clock.
So then
Okay,
what's the
or
maximum?
I'm just gonna have it on a
maximum?
weekend versus, so those things are important. And if you don't know, it makes it very difficult for the board, or if you don't testify to it, it makes it very difficult for the board.
I'd say
evaluate.
one a month would be amazing for me, if I had one a month.
What would be the maximum?
The maximum, one a month is the maximum for me. And I don't think I had that, one a month.
Okay.
That's,
Well, I think there's a difference between one a month and 3 a week. I mean, if he has 2 a month, I don't think that's materially different than 1 a month. And that's, I think, originally he was saying 1 to 2 a month.
Twice as many.
And to date, you've had 2 in 1.5 years?
Yeah.
Yes. Graham, and then.
I just wanted to, just a general point of clarification based on that comment. The board considers, the witness did testify that there's different types of events. There's community events, membership events, birthday events. I think it'd be important for the board to ask the applicant to clarify that 1 a month. Is that one of all those types of events, or does that categorically, how does that fit? So it's just a suggestion.
Good point.
You
So
gonna-
Lopez?
what is that?
He's asking, are you gonna have one event period per month, or are you gonna have?
So you list
Or more than
community
one a
events, private.
Is one of each type of event or one event?
It's only one event a month is fine for me.
We only put those categories in because we don't know whether, someone's gonna come in and wanna have a private event, or they're gonna wanna have a public event. It's the people that approached him said, I'd like to bring some people to your store and have an event where you show us some different cigars. So he doesn't really know exactly, but he only anticipates this happening once a month.
Yeah, how I know if it's your birthday tomorrow and you say you wanna rent the place for your birthday, say, that's okay. And it's yours next week, the same month. It's
Right.
like 2 a month.
It also
I-
mentions on your website, memberships are available and includes invitations to complimentary cigar member only events. So it mentions there are gonna be some member only events, and this is mentioning community events and then private events like a birthday party. So I assume those are kind of 3 different types that might happen, right? In a year or in any amount of time. I think that's what we're trying to say. You know, if we could understand how many of each type of events, that we can understand what the parking need might be.
Well, and then you have things like this special improvement district that is trying to get the businesses all, so that could be a type, like tomorrow night is girls' night out, right? So there's also those kind of events. Would they want to be included in that kind of an event?
Mhm.
Right, that's a community event.
That's a
Yeah.
community event, correct?
So let's ask again, how many events might you have per month of each type, of like a private, event, a members only event, or a community event?
Okay, the community event counts too? Because I don't know when is the community events, so I can count that. Well, I can do like one private for the members
Okay.
and the other one for the public. So 2 a month.
Maybe 2 a month.
2 a month.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, now, did you have a question before that? I think I might have cut you off.
No, I just,
Okay.
I would say the thing that I think we need to focus on though is the timing. Because if it is 3 o'clock, that's gonna be different parking situation than 7 o'clock.
Right, well, he testified events would be in the evening.
So from 7 till
Too
9.
close. Yeah.
Okay, and what I worry about too is that if they do have 50 people coming in, right,
49.
49 people coming in, then I'm worried about then the Lobster Shack. And if it is more than twice a month, it's called Lobster Shack.
Oh, yeah, across
Yeah.
the street.
Yeah, right across the street, exactly. So I'm just worried if he does become more successful than twice a month, that it might start affecting it. Is there any way we can sort of?
I don't think I
Help.
affect those business. I think I give you more business for those kind of restaurant because they wanna eat over there. That happen now. They
Right.
just smoking and they call the restaurant around for delivery. So I give you more business now. If I get more busy,
Yeah, before we
That's
came
one way of
over,
looking at it, but we're worried about parking.
we were talking with these other two businesses about this exact application that's coming tonight, and they were saying that it was helping their business that he's across the street, not causing them any kind of parking concerns or traffic concerns, because it's a added thing people can do when they're coming out to eat, is to go by his store and get some cigars.
Okay, so again, yeah, there's just the times.
So I guess we're hearing testimony about, up to 2 events per month and to be held 7 PM or after. So in terms of frequency and parking demand being kind of after business hours, so to less conflict with
The other,
daytime uses.
And of course, I know this sounds a little silly, but like an advisory to when it's booked, that there is the opportunity to park, just to create awareness, because if people are not from the area or don't realize that there's parking behind there, so you just sort of say, when you book it, and if there's issues parking, feel free to park behind whatever, Bagel Pantry or those restaurants. or something.
As opposed to in the neighborhood or.
Right, exactly, as opposed to the neighborhood.
And I'm just curious, do we do a time restriction on community events?
I don't think, no, because if it's like Girls Night Out, it's being done by the community.
Correct.
Yes.
You wouldn't want to do a time restriction on that. Good, that's what I was,
Yeah.
well, because we were saying time restrictions, but I assume the
Saying
time
to start
restrictions for the private events have the time restrictions, not the community events.
Yes.
It's
That's what I
it's
wanted to
really,
say.
it's to catch any events run by the establishment.
Right.
Right, but if you have to say like a girls' night out tomorrow night,
That's
the
not run by
girls,
the
That's run by the
establishment, that's
town.
run by.
that's run by the town. Right, but they're part of it, is what I'm saying. They'll be,
More questions from the board at this time. I think, are we okay to go to the public for questions? Ed, are you comfortable with that?
I am, so far.
So any members of the public, thank you. So now I'm going to ask if anybody has questions for you based on what you shared. So any members of the public, okay, so we'll have you come on up and you can just ask questions. Yeah, you guys can take a seat if you want to rest your legs. And you can approach the mic. Can you state your name and address for?
Sure.
for-
My name is Nancy, last name is Dougherty, Dougherty, principal at Studio 1200, located at 511 Milburn Avenue. So I do have a couple of questions. I know there was testimony that the exhaust system, that you can't smell anything outside the building. And I do want to say, we're happy to have you as a neighbor. You know, I think for all of us on our end of Milburn Avenue, more business is better and all of that. So, but we do, for anybody who doesn't know, our driveway is right next to their building, and that is our exit driveway coming out of 511 Milburn Avenue. So we have people who work very late in our office. You can see our lights on most evenings. And so my question is, I know it was stated that there was testimony that the Blue Ox system can accommodate 40 people smoking cigars and you won't smell anything outside. I do have to say that every night when I go out, if there are people in the building, I smell it as soon as we open the back door on our property. So that's a question. I don't know what happens with that. I'm not a cigar smoke lover, so that's one question. The second question I do have is, I think there was testimony that people are not smoking out front at the moment. We have, there are a couple of chairs out there. Sometimes there's folding chairs that come along. And so my question would be really to get clarified that there are not people smoking outside, because that's not our experience. Again, my staff comes out of that driveway at 6, 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night. So I have a question about that. I do also have a question about sort of square footage and the size of the building and relative to retail space, and if it's being used for other purposes. I don't think that's something that anybody that here can answer necessarily, but I do think that that should be clarified. If you're using it as gathering space as opposed to retail space, there's different space requirements per person. So I haven't seen any testimony about that. So my question would be really, could somebody verify the actual occupancy based on the use?
Those questions can be asked of the applicant, so.
Yep.
Although we were given the opportunity to sit down, I guess you're gonna have to get back up again.
Yes.
And answer
The
the
first time
questions that have been.
so you had, I didn't know you worked next door.
Every day.
I never saw you.
Okay, yep,
Fernando,
Nancy.
nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Yeah, what is the first
The
question?
first one was about the cigar smoke, if it can be smelled outside.
I can smell it right now, and I just don't smoke today. It's like, if somebody's outside smoking, and you pass by, you will smell it. So,
We can smell it coming out of the system from when people are inside.
I don't know how that happened, because the system don't have the exhaust outside. It's just inside, just clean the air inside.
It's a
And just keep
filtration, it doesn't have
filtration
an
and
exhaust.
keeping inside.
Again, I think.
No, nobody told me that over there, because if you told me, I'd sit in there and you told me, hey, this thing is thing or something, I can do something. Maybe the door was open, I can close it, and I do something not to bother you. Just tell me, simple, I can fix it.
Right. Okay, my second question had to do with the people sitting outside. I know you testified that.
That's
There-
one of those guys sitting outside. That's me and another guy. It's like 3 people maximum. We're
So we
sitting
heard
outside.
2, sometimes it's 3. I mean, again, we come out of there, every day, every night, our staff comes out of there. So clearly there's a concern. I think we have a concern about safety, and as does everybody. So if I'm not concerned what you do in your building, you're not concerned what I do in my building, but I am concerned about safety, and I am concerned about odor and concerned about those things that happen outside the building. And to me, some of what was said in the original testimony is not what is happening, next door to us. So that's a concern. And then the final question is just really verifying the square footage based on the use and the occupancy, which again, I don't know that you can answer, sort of standing here. I think it's a technical question.
Okay, well, I'll let you respond to that first.
Well,
What we understand is that the occupancy criteria for the space are not gonna be exceeded, but for the purpose of, it's been recommended to us by, I forget which individual who's making a recommendation to the board, that 49 is the maximum number of people under the
I think it
fire
came from the
code.
fire code, right?
So we're not
Yes.
proposing to have more than 49 people at any event. It would be approved if the board approves the application.
So I think my question would be relative to retail space and what the maximum occupancy is for retail space. So if the zoning definition is that it's a retail space, what the maximum occupancy for the building is? Because
There is no maximum, it's not a zoning issue,
It's a fire.
it's a fire issue. So the zoning issue, we would use the whole space would be equated to the retail, which I think is 1 per 200. And then we.
For parking.
Just for, we don't speak to occupancy at all.
Right. So again, I don't know where that question goes, but I just know that retail space has a certain occupancy based on square footage.
Can I ask, Ms. Doherty, you're an architect, so
Yes,
do
I
you know
am.
that number? Since you're an
I believe the
architect.
number is 60 square feet per person for retail space. So it's complicated because there's a zoning definition and there's a building code definition. And the zoning definition has to do with parking and planning and zoning.
Which
But
is
the-
of our, yeah.
Right, but the building code definition is based on use.
Right.
So office space is 150 square feet per person, right? Retail space is 60 square feet, et cetera. So just getting
So there's
those tied
over-
together.
There's over 3,000 square feet, so by your definition, you wouldn't be exceeding 50, they'd be within that.
It'd be within-
50.
Yeah.
It would be.
50
below.
What,
You'd be
well below what you're.
49.
I just want to verify the square footage. Okay.
Thank you for your questions.
Yeah.
And I don't know that we know the answer, but I don't believe we have any restrictions on outdoor smoking in the community, like on the sidewalk or anything.
Like public property, like
Public property,
a
yeah.
public building, but I don't think there's any
I think
restrictions.
smoking is permitted publicly.
Correct.
In
There's nothing
indoor.
that
I don't know of any.
I think.
Fernando will try to be a good neighbor regardless, but.
She asked me,
No.
I'm not,
Well, I think the idea was, if I might, I'm sorry. I think the idea that permeated the resolution was your patrons as part of your business. You can't control a patron who comes in, buys a cigar, walks outside your door and lights up.
Right.
They have a right to do that.
yes,
What I think the idea here was that you were not going to be encouraging that, so to speak. You know, you weren't going to have people come in, try a cigar, go outside, see how the cigar is, come back in. The idea was if you want to sample a cigar, you go to the sampling area inside. That's what I think we were trying to deal with in the resolution. Beyond that, we can't control that anyway. We don't have the ability to just, and you have no ability to police that.
it's like the next door, the coffee place. I came with the peanut butter smell. But I go there and buy something else, and I don't tell her, hey, you have to do something with it's your business. It's like, what can I do? So.
Thank you.
Okay.
Do any other members of the public have questions? Oh, I'm
I
sorry.
apologize, I just want to get back to this. Just looking at the plan, I just wanted to verify, the square footage for the cigar shop is 1,813 square feet. The overall
The front portion.
property is 3,000 square feet, but it's only half of the property. So just for clarification on the math.
Yeah, he only has half the building.
Right.
Okay, thank you. I
Yeah.
see.
How many square feet did you say that was? The
13.
Yes,
It's
18.
just to the whole.
Yeah.
One thing, so the fire
Yeah.
department considers it a different use.
You don't utilize the back
Right.
area.
No, I don't
You don't
necessarily know.
utilize the back area.
I do have a question. Not yet, but you can. We're probably almost. Well, do we do statements for the public now? No, at the end. Well, you only have one
Well, I think-
witness.
Yeah, there's no more.
We don't have anything else to present. We're ready to.
Yes, you can. Can you come on up and
I'm on the clock. I gotta be here. You're a volunteer.
If you're gonna be a witness, we'll have you come on up, we'll have you sworn in, and you provide your testimony.
Yeah,
Yeah, same, if you're gonna make a statement, not asking questions, but making a statement.
So I just.
Wait. Raise
my
your right
name's
hand.
Christine
Wait.
West.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm testimony about to give in tonight's proceeding be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Your name and address for the record, spelling your name.
Christine, CHRISTINE, Best, BEST, 15 Fairfield Terrace, Milford Falls.
Great, thank you.
Oh, okay. No, I was just listening and thinking about the complexities of this and the comment that I actually, when I heard her comment, the architect's comment, I think it's a separate issue because if there's massive amounts of odor, it needs to be addressed. However, I was kind of saddened actually, these are retail people and I actually spent 25 years running and doing startups in retail and I know all aspects of the business. And so he's just starting up a company, doing his thing, and I really think that it's like the micromanaging of this whole process. When you do a retail startup, you start in a certain way. You might have one event a month. He might blow it out to 20 events a month. And the real issue is the parking permit and whether it can be, applicable after 7:00 p.m. And I just was completely sort of surprised. I just think he's trying to operate a business, and maybe we need to build a parking deck multi-level next to that monstrosity so that people can actually frequent businesses in that area, particularly, with that entire, Springfield, I don't even know how to describe it, housing project that came in. So he's just, we need to actually embrace businesses like his. And also it's a very upscale business and there's so many young men. I mean, when I was young, we'd sit, everybody sit around and smoke cigars at the house and, have cocktails, et cetera. And I think it's a great business for this township and we need it and we really need to embrace it and look more like Summit. So I fully support it.
Thank you. Mr. Grillo.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Do you swear or affirm testimony about to give in tonight's proceeding be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Your name and for the record, spelling your name.
Stephen, Steven, Grillo, Grillo. Madam Chair, I have two, clarifications that came up in questions, if you don't mind, before I begin. So the first one regarding the employee parking that Mr. Hauper brought up, I don't think that applies to the private lot. Lot 14, which is behind the Bagel Pantry building, is, let's call it 3/5 public municipal lot towards Old Short Hills Road, and then say 2/5 private, owned by Mr. Lopez's landlord. So if his employee, obviously it's a short term, right, a couple hour employee, if they were to park in the private lot, they would not be required to get a parking pass. The parking passes only are for street parking and municipal lots.
All my concern was it was in the original resolution, and so I was
Yep.
trying to carry that over to make sure any additional employees, because he had testified that there was only a sole employee himself, and so I was trying to carry that over.
I happen to know the answer about parking passes, so I thought I would share it. But that's the case with that. And then in terms of the cafe license, I know Eileen alluded to it. His business is sort of in this gray zone in that it's not a restaurant or a food service establishment, so it doesn't qualify for a cafe license. But there's also nothing precluding him from putting a table and chairs out front. And so we can't, as a municipality, give him approval for a cafe license, but we also can't tell him that he can't have a chair and table. So it's more of a good neighbor policy than anything else. And certainly, I think he responded to what his neighbor, Mr. Artie, said. So hopefully that illuminates a few things. But good evening. My name is Steve Grillo, and I am the Executive Director of Explore Millburn Short Hills. I'm also a member of the Development Review Committee. I'm here this evening to speak in favor of the approval of the application for Tonino Cigars. For those of you who might not be familiar with Explore, we are the special improvement district for the town. We provide services related to placemaking, streetscaping, events, marketing, business education, and others to over 500 businesses in 5 sub-districts, including the 500 block of Millburn Avenue, known as the Upper Millburn Avenue Business District, where Tonino Cigars is located. Since August of 2020, when Explore was created and we began tracking Our overall commercial vacancy rate has dropped from 10% to 4.8%. And 86 new businesses, which is 17% of the total businesses in the city, have opened. 11 businesses have opened on Upper Milburn Avenue in that same period, which represents 25% of the total number of businesses in that district. Put simply, 1 in 4 businesses that is on Upper Milburn Avenue today wasn't there 2.5 years ago. And I've noted these statistics because there has been, and there will continue to be, a renaissance on Upper Milburn Avenue. And Fernando Lopez and Tonino Cigars are part of that renaissance. Along with his new neighbors such as Taste Buddy, Interior Motif, Jack's Lobster Shack, Over Camera, Bagel Pantry, and others, the district is now teeming with customers both from Milburn Short Hills and surrounding communities. Tonino presents a high-end cigar experience that is offered nowhere else in town, and Mr. Lopez has been a force for good on Upper Milburn Avenue. He's a dedicated, friendly, and engaged business owner who can always be seen walking up and down the street welcoming customers, visiting other owners, and apparently meeting some tonight, and being an ambassador for our business community. He's a driven entrepreneur that has been nothing but a positive addition to the neighborhood and the town as a whole. And while I understand and appreciate the need to evaluate Mr. Lopez's application with a strict lens to ensure compliance, it's also incumbent upon my organization, the township administration, and local boards and commissions to work together to find paths forward and positive resolutions to issues. Resolving this application in a positive way will demonstrate to business and property owners that our community embraces entrepreneurship and supports engaged members such as Mr. Lopez and Tonino Cigars. So I thank you for your diligent review this evening. Well, my wife and kids want to know where I am, and I am going home, but I thank you all so very much for your attention this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have testimony as well? Welcome. We'll similarly have you be put in for the record.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear affirm testimony you give tonight be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Your name and address for the record, spelling your name.
Lily Bryan,
Okay,
Right.
spell your last name.
Bryen. What else did you ask me
Your
for?
address.
Home address,
That's fine.
979 Rosemary Drive, Basking Ridge. And I work at Studio 1200, 511 Milburn Avenue. I'm the administrative director there. So we definitely are happy to have Tonino Cigars and see the block thriving, and we wish Mr. Lopez nothing but success. We have had some issues, some we've talked about the smoke, and he's been very kind about that. And our concern is that expanding the use might worsen some of our issues, so I just want to state what they are here. There is concern about our driveway. As Nancy said, it's very narrow and it's our exit. So it's when we have folks sometimes taking calls there or walking up and down the driveway, it is a safety issue for Mr. Lopez's customers as well as our staff who tends to leave at night. So we would want to ensure that would not happen anymore. We have had an issue with the cigar butts in our driveway and our property, so we would just need to make sure that would not happen, and we are concerned it would be multiplied if there were events going on. And as Nancy mentioned, we do have employees that have complained to us about the smoke, so we do keep our windows closed, and we do still smell it when we go out to our parking lot, which is adjacent and in the back of our building. I know about the 2 filters. Mr. Lopez actually showed them to me, but I don't know the technical aspects of it or if they're working properly. I don't know. I just know my employees are complaining to me about the smoke. And since COVID, we raise our windows now to get the fresh air coming in, but we now shut them. So we're just concerned with, a lot more traffic in the store, that these issues would become more difficult for us. So we just want to be able to say that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else have comments? Okay, thank you. Well, here we are. We still have sort of the challenges in front of us of moving forward on this application in terms of granting the waiver for parking.
The variance.
Variance, I'm sorry, for parking. And then my question remains of what I don't know if we're gonna change the recitals, which is the word that they use there, or go back and amend what was previously in the resolution. I guess we don't amend it, we would just set
Correct.
forth
That is correct.
conditions. So what was approved at the time, and then there would be a new superseding approval if we were to move forward in such a way this evening.
That's correct.
Okay.
Question, do we nullify the original one? How does that work?
Any inconsistency between the new one and the old one will be governed by the new one.
Okay. I think we heard testimony tonight that, yes, while as a business, they are looking to increase the foot traffic and their retail services, that's the goal, right, to have a successful business, you're doing more business. I think we talked about the distribution of clientele coming in by extending business hours, by restricting private events to the post 7 p.m. I think that would limit the excess of number of people requiring parking during hours when we would be concerned. Limiting the number of events per month could limit the amount of inconveniences for neighbors or concerns that could be happening, whether it's on the sidewalk or I guess in the driveway adjacent. Any other sort of thoughts, comments, or concerns, or those two conditions, as well as mentioning the availability of parking across the way to people who are coming for an event. What other items of discussion? Go ahead, Allison, and then Gaston.
I was just thinking about, the testimony that was given about one road in and out, and with more people walking on the sidewalk during these events, and safety is a huge issue. Is that something we can pass on for our town to review and make sure, that all precautions are taken for that road that Studio 21's coming out of? There's more people on the sidewalk, more people parking now later at night. Is there something we can do to address that?
I think that's the enforcement side of it, which is, I don't know, is that beyond what we would be approving tonight?
Correct.
A valid concern and issue that we may want to sort of make a recommendation, but I don't know that the enforcement of where pedestrians choose to walk once they exit the establishment.
I'm just asking for us to make a recommendation for someone to take a look at that or review from a traffic standpoint to make sure that that's a proper.
A traffic standpoint, I don't know, that's not a driveway that's on this property, so I don't know that we can do that as part of this application review.
Thank you.
We can't, but I would say, look, it's not within our purview, but while I'm standing on this soapbox, we can just ask that now that you're aware of it, that you be mindful of that driveway there and you make sure, even for the safety of your own patrons, that, that's an active driveway even at night, so that they don't walk there.
Well, nobody walk there, because it's not there. What is the way to go there? There's nothing there, it's just a dark hole over there.
Right, I don't know if people are using phones and just
They
kind of
are.
walking,
They are,
pacing
they
aimlessly.
take phone calls, some, it's okay, but it's not safe, so sometimes you have some of the people from your store who walk in the driveway to take a call.
So, but the point is, if somebody's walking out at night, especially if you've got a group of people in the store, give them a heads up that that's an active driveway, people work late next door, try to make, sure that it's nice for the other people.
Oh, I will tell,
Labeled.
that's the,
Active
for me, I
driveway.
never saw that.
Right, I guess we can't have people making cross comments, we'll keep the meeting here, but, right, potentially labeling, if there's a desire for the property owner to label active driveway, something, but that I think is beyond the scope of, yes, as asking for good neighborly behavior, I think we can do, I don't think we can take more action on this
My
application.
understanding. Thank you.
Gaston.
Yep, and I just wanted to add that with the time and instant, right, per frequency of the events, I think is good for us. If it does become more frequent, or if you need to expand, then that might constitute a change in use. So it might not be for us to decide. That's why I think that using those limitations is good for this board.
Great. That said, if we were to make a motion, it would be motion to approve application, award the parking variance with the stipulations of no more than 2 events per month, private events to occur after 7 PM, and notification of participants of private events of available parking.
Yes.
Query, do we have to say private events or just events?
Well, we would distinguish anything between
The 7
private
PM
events
for
because of
private
timing.
events.
Oh,
because of
versus
community
community,
events.
okay.
Yeah. Like, we did make that distinction.
Okay, no, that's fine.
Does anybody make that motion?
I'll make a motion.
Move to approve, okay. Do we have a second?
Second,
Corey Biller,
yes.
Allison Campfield,
Yes.
Michael Cohen,
Yes.
Maggie Megan.
Yes.
Deborah Nevis,
Yes.
Shu Jaffa Sean,
Yes.
Srini Vijay,
Yes.
Gaston Halbert,
Yes.
Beth Zoll.
Yes. Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you for hearing us out, hearing out the concerns of your neighbors, and we look forward to the success of your business.
You probably hit your stand goal for the day.
Okay, I move to adjourn our meeting. Our next will be held on Wednesday, June
You
21st.
want me to give an update?
Oh, Graham. Yeah, we
Not to
do.
belabor
We
my
do
update,
want an
I wanted to
update on the
get
open
I just figured-
space element. I'm
I'll be
sorry.
brief, yes.
Look
So-
at me moving to get you out of here. Go ahead.
Good evening, everybody. Graham Petto, planner for the board. Just wanted to give a very, very brief update on the open
Thank
space outreach plan. First, I want to thank our committee members, Deborah Nevis, Vice Chair Gaston Halpert, and Megan Higgins, for their support. We had a great session in Taylor Park on Saturday. A number of folks were out and about. We were able to also circulate the park and meet up with a bunch of T-ball games that were happening and get parents to take the survey. I was at Milburn Middle School yesterday with students and then at Milburn High School again today. A number of students took the survey both days, which was great to see. And we'll be back here in this room Monday evening at 7 o'clock for another version of the outreach program. Monday's version, we were going to do some breakout groups to have some small discussion topical conversations on different areas among residents that participate. So just wanted to give that. We're up to 800 survey respondents so far. I'm hoping to hit 2,100 because that will be 10% of the town. So the more we share, the better. So get the word out. Thanks. That's it.
Thank you.
Can you send us all the, can you send us all the QR code and then we can then
Yes,
pop
certainly.
it up on
Yep.
the,
Yeah,
our
I'll-
different
I'll-
social channels,
I'll
et cetera?
distribute the graphics and everything through Eileen, and then she can send it out to the full board membership to share around town. So
Thank you.
Right. Thank you all. That's it.
Thank you. That said, I make a motion to adjourn. Our next meeting is Wednesday, June 21st. Do we have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Good night. Meeting adjourned.
Good night, thank you.
Shall I go have a cigar?
Too late, it's closed.
It's closed, it's good.
Of the smoke.
Yeah, thank you.
I always thought we were safe.